Chapter 21, Desert Island Survival End. Bell's English was excellent, probably because he was English. The first thing they did upon their return from their expedition to the center of the island was to plant the seeds they collected in the vegetable garden. Zhang Heng went back and forth, eventually deciding on giving up on the idea of making a skirt. It was mostly because he still would not be able to cosplay as Monkey King without the staff. In the end, Bell conjoined the two pieces of jaguar pelt into carpets. Not long after, the breeding garden was full of animals the explorer brought back from his hunts. Mickey Mouse seemed slightly taken aback by the sudden increase of neighbors. Zhang Heng even found the dodo bird's wife, allowing the two people on the island to enjoy some eggs at last. Finally, Zhang Heng had this feeling that he had conquered nature. He had eaten more than 20 varieties of vegetables, added 2 more seasonings to his pantry, owned a pond full of seafood, which he could take from whenever he liked, and ate meat every day. Most importantly, he eventually found someone he could talk with. That feeling was just like when Robinson met Friday. Well, all right, from the student-teacher perspective, probably more like Friday. For 4 hours every day, Zhang Heng would be learning English from Bell, which included listening, speaking, reading, and writing. On top of that, he continued his archery practices, although he'd already achieved his goal. Over the course of the year, it had now become a habit. The only thing was that he no longer spent as much time on it as he used to. As an added bonus, Bell taught him some defensive moves. His time on the island was coming to an end. On the 520th morning, a rescue vessel passing by spotted the signal fire by the beach and sent a lifeboat to the island. Before the boat could even reach the shore, a woman jumped off the vessel and came running towards the men in tears. "My wife Kaya." The explorer dropped the homemade fishing rod in his hand and stood up abruptly. The relieved couple embraced each other. Bell then removed the blade he stowed across his waist and placed it in Zhang Heng's hand. "As per our agreement previously, this belongs to you now. I've been to many dangerous places all over the world, the polar regions, deserts, highlands, but this was the first time I've been marooned on a desert island. It has been an incredibly unforgettable and valuable experience. You are my forever friend. Of all our days here, it's not just you who was the one learning. I've also learned a lot from you. I learned for the first time that there's such a thing as grammar in the English language. Let's go, my friend. We should go home." Zhang Heng followed the butter couple onto the lifeboat, surprised to see that there were reporters from several TV stations on board. Everyone roared into claps and applause the moment they caught a glimpse of the explorer who had returned safely. On the ship, Zhang Heng took a long, hot bath and changed into clothes the sailors had provided. Finally, that feeling of returning to a civilized society dawned upon him. Instead of joining the celebration, however, Zhang Heng found himself a secluded and quiet corner on the ship that no one would take notice of. He was almost 2 hours away from leaving this virtual world. It felt like the longest 2 hours of his life. Zhang Heng was wondering what the return process was going to be like when suddenly, darkness enveloped everything around him, and a familiar voice spoke in his ear. "Arrived at the return deadline. Task completion confirmed. Beginner's edition of Desert Island Survival successfully completed. The first round of the game is over. Returning to reality." When Zhang Heng's vision had been restored, he found himself sitting by the bar holding the cup of water and lime he'd taken a sip from. The first thing he did was to reach out and touch his face. That thick, stubbled, and coarse skin weathered by the wind, and the sun was gone. The bartender lady, obviously considerate, took out a compact mirror from her purse and passed it to him. With the help of the little mirror, Zhang Heng was able to confirm that he looked no different from when he first walked into the bar. He was still dressed in his sports attire and running shoes. His Swiss Army knife was still safely tucked away in his pocket. So what was that? A strange dream? No, you did disappear for 2 hours, not just from this building or this bar. You could not be found in every corner of this world. The bartender took back her compact. "Now, you must have a lot of questions, but unfortunately, I cannot answer most of them. You will have to find that out for yourself in the game." Zhang Heng listened, speechless. What I can tell you is that this game takes place once every month. You can pick whatever time you like to come to the checkpoint and join the game. It won't always be the sex and the city bar, though. There is more than one checkpoint in every city. If you can't find them, you can always give customer service a call and use the special login service after paying a sum. Failure to log in on time will result in your disqualification. Also, game participants, by default, must accept a strict non-disclosure agreement. You're forbidden to disclose anything related to anyone other than the players and staff. I think that about sums up the basic restrictions. Don't hold on to your fluke mind. The bartender rubbed her chin. What else is there? Let me think. Oh, other than logins, the game venues also provide other services. You can consult customer service for more details. Peeled off a sticky note and scribbling down some numbers, she continued, "This is the number. Don't call for nothing because I am your customer service." "You have an awful lot of jobs," Zhang Heng noted in surprise. "It's not like I have a choice. Houses in big cities are so expensive," the bartender sighed. "All right, is there anything else?" Zhang Heng searched his pocket and took out a furry item. "Tell me, the services you mentioned, do they also include item identification?" "Everything from the game, not excluding even the beard and the scar on his shoulder, the collection of stoneware he made, and the knife that Belle gifted him, did not make it back with him to reality. Everything had just been sitting quietly in his pocket." "Game item," the bartender gasped. "It looks like you've got yourself quite the bounty this time. These kinds of things are very uncommon. Most people can't even find one after several rounds of the game. I do provide an identification service here, but it's going to cost you 5 game points. Do you have it?" "How do I pay?" The bartender took out a tablet and after a few taps, brought up a payment interface. "Just enter your player ID number. No need to worry about other people using your number, though you have to be present for the payment to be effective." Probably because he had seen too much since he set foot in the bar, Zhang Heng had already turned a little numb. He had already memorized the set of numbers and quickly regurgitated them. After keying them in, the bartender slid on a pair of gloves before placing the rabbit's foot into a small wooden box. "This will take some time, about 2 to 3 days. I'll text you when it's done." Drawn to her movements, Zhang Heng had a sudden ominous feeling. "Wait, now, why are you being so careful?" Chapter 22, A Precious Pearl. "Fine, considering you've just made a transaction with me, I'll reveal something useful to you." The bartender took off her gloves. "Do you know why game items are so valuable?" I think you've mentioned that there are very few of them." Rarity does not equate to value. The term game item is used to correspond with the theme, and it's not accurate at all. In reality, this is a very magical item. It contains inconceivable supernatural forces. They work in both games and reality. If you use it well, it will be beneficial to you. But sometimes it could create problems for you. No one can guarantee that this force will bring positive effects, so you have to be extra careful when handling game items. Just because it has not been identified yet does not mean that the results are not present. Speaking of which, did anything strange happen to you after you picked it up? No. Zhang Heng thought back to the time after the rabbit's foot was given to him. His life went on without incident. Then, this is probably not the type with negative effects, or perhaps it could be triggered under specific conditions. For some reason, the bartender's tone was laced with pity. When these negative effect game items are used well, they can do wonders. A wooden box made of wood can isolate its supernatural powers, the best option to store the items. If there's a need, you can always buy them from me. Oh, and also, if you have any game items that you do not need, you can choose to leave it here so I can help you sell it. There's always a large-scale auction at the end of every year. Keep an eye on your mailbox. An email will be sent to you before the event. If there's nothing else, we'll meet again next time." Well, the bartender's service was terrible. That initial excitement after earning his 5 game points had dwindled and suddenly lost all interest to explain anything else to her. Zhang Heng asked her what services were available at the game site, and she said that she would send him a PDF to him through WeChat. Upon exiting the metal room, Zhang Heng was bombarded with loud thumping music, which he no longer thought was raucous. After spending a year and a half on that island, hearing the symphonies of a civilized society made him feel a little warm and fuzzy inside. Zhang Heng descended the iron ladder and quickly disappeared amongst the crowd of people. Although it was already 1 in the morning, the number of cars parked outside the bar seemed to have increased. Zhang Heng did not return to school because 1, it was quite late already, and 2, too much information had been dumped on him for the past 2 hours. He needed to go someplace quiet to sort through and digest them. Besides that, there was something else he needed to verify. So Zhang Heng checked into a room in the Express Hotel by the road and asked the receptionist for a pen and some paper. Tired as he was, he did not feel like sleeping right now. He turned on the table lamp and promptly listed down every important detail that had happened today and his theories. When dawn broke, he reread the stack of lists he had written and rewritten, tore them up, and flushed them down the toilet. After that, he checked out of the room before heading straight to the archery range across the road, the very place he'd been coming to train. As soon as it opened at 8 a.m., Zhang Heng went in, took out the SF recurve bow he deposited there, and selected a 30-meter archery range. He drew his bow and released an arrow. 6th ring. Zhang Heng was not at all surprised. He had been using a primitive homemade bow and was not used to this modern bow yet. The first shot was just a test. Of course, it was not the least bit startling that the results weren't satisfactory. Adjusting his angle, he released the bowstring once more. The second one was much better. 8th ring. That very moment, Zhang Heng's coach walked in. He was just about to greet his student but decided not to bother him when he saw how absorbed Zhang Heng was. He stood silently at the back with his thermos cup, ready to correct Zhang Heng's posture and movement. Then the next arrow pierced the 9th ring. Not bad. That was a good shot, the instructor thought to himself. Most of the time, when newcomers first started, they would have kinds of problems ranging from not holding the bow firmly enough to the wrong posture, thus deviating from their center of gravity. Zhang Heng had only just begun to pick up the sport, but his posture was spot on as if he had done it many times before. It was solid as a mountain. If that was not talent, then what was that? Zhang Heng's coach was a former member of the city's archery team. Alas, his talent was limited. No matter how hard he trained, he could not seem to improve. Soon after, he was defeated by an amateur who had only trained for less than half a year. Disappointed in himself, he left the professional circle and was invited by the archery range's owner to coach there. Seeing how well the sport had been doing these 2 years, he could not help but feel a stirring inside him. But he was too old for this. He had no more potential left to discover. Even if he returned to the game, he would end up nowhere. Thus, he decided to focus his attention on the young people training in the range. He wanted to see if he could develop a keen eye for scouting able players and take talented apprentices under his wing. Who would know that perhaps one day, one might be able to compete at the national level and fulfill his dream on his behalf. With that thought, he began to keep an eye out for potential candidates. Initially, he focused mainly on 8 to 14-year-olds, the best age for laying a foundation. Any older and it would be too late, which was why he never paid too much attention to Zhang Heng. In the 3 previous sessions, this young man did not show any special skills and was no different from amateur hobbyists who played just for sport. Zhang Heng's progress gave him quite a shock. He had not even started training, but yet he was surprisingly good. He had risen so quickly above his peers from the same batch. At the same time, however, the instructor felt sorry for Zhang Heng. The boy had gotten in touch with the sport too late in the game. Even if he had the talent, without sufficient practice, it would be extremely challenging for him to go any further. While these thoughts were running through the instructor's mind, Zhang Heng drew in a deep breath. When he was done with the adjustment, he released 5 arrows in succession. Each shot was less than 2 seconds apart. Out of the 5 arrows, the 4th hit the 10th ring, and a slightly faulty one landed on the 9th ring. Zhang Heng knew that this had to do with his coordination. He was used to that body back on the desert island. A year and a half ago, his strength and response had already deviated by a little. However, from these few shots, he had already found out what he needed to know. The skills he had gained while training retained in his muscle memory. Now, he just needed 2 weeks of practice to return to his level back on the island. In fact, with a more powerful and more accurate modern bow, his shots would have much higher accuracy and a greater range. It appeared that the skills acquired in the game could be brought back to reality. This was actually not too surprising since those skills did not fall from the sky. He had actually trained hard for them. Zhang Heng also noticed that unlike traditional games, this game did not utilize the 4 attributes system. The body he used in the game was his own. When he was in trouble, he had to use his knowledge and abilities to solve them. Therefore, the skills each person developed were essential. Thinking about it now, those extra 24 hours did not seem so bad after all. This meant that he would have more game time compared to the other players, and could better improve himself. The critical thing here was that these in-game improvements were just as applicable in reality. Zhang Heng groaned, utterly unaware of how much his 5 shots had affected his instructor. The latter nearly dropped his mug. A hardworking amateur hobbyist could hit 49 points with 5 arrows. However, considering how recent Zhang Heng had started learning, which were only 3 sessions and that quick succession of shots, only a precious handful of hobbyists would be able to do that. He was a prodigy for sure. What other explanations could there be? The coach was now seeing Zhang Heng in a completely different light. He looked at Zhang Heng as if he was looking at an inimitable jade. The longer he looked, the more he liked what he saw. How could I not have noticed such a brilliant treasure? Chapter 23, Warning Sign. Within half a minute, the coach envisioned how, under his guidance, Zhang would Heng advance by leaps and bounds. He would shock the judges in his first competition and then return defeated from the nationals. But just as he was about to give up, he would rise from the ashes under his coach's counsel. He would finally join the national team and win the Olympic gold medal. The instructor even thought about the interviews that would take place after that. In the end, before this Youngblood story could even begin, it died a premature death at the young man's tactful decline. Archery was just a hobby for Zhang Heng. He had no plans to make a living out of it. In fact, he knew better than anyone else that his archery skills were simply a culmination of time. He did not possess any unique talents. He might perhaps be able to become master among the amateurs, but if he had gotten involved in the professional circle, it would be challenging, to say the least, for him to rise to the top. On top of that, this was the second time Zhang Heng had rejected his instructor. The latter finally recognized that the young man before him had no intention of mixing in this circle, and could not help but feel that it was such a shame. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. He could not put a gun to Zhang Heng's head and force him to make him his coach. After a few more shots, and Zhang Heng got his answers and stopped training. The morning had classes in store for him. Thank goodness it was at 9:45. Depositing his bow, he promptly returned to school. The moment his peers spotted him in the classroom, they shot him knowing, sassy smiles. Zhang Heng did not know how to explain himself, so he blurted that he had actually spent a year and a half stranded on a deserted island before finally finding another man. The lesson was underway when Wei Jiangyang snuck up to the seat next to him and tried to make him confess. In spite of that, Zhang Heng did not appear to be lying, nor did he blush or react suspiciously. When he finally accepted that nothing of the amorous sort had befallen his friend the night before, Wei Jiangyang quickly changed the subject. Zio and her roommates are thinking of going camping next week, but I'm concerned about their safety. I'm looking for some guys to join. Chen Huadong has already agreed to come. Not so for Ma Wei. How about you? Zio was Wei Jiangyang's girlfriend. If Zio wanted to go camping, it was without question that Wei Jiangyang would want to join her. One lone male, however, was not strong enough. Also, wherever the couple went, they would always attract Flack, his girlfriend's roommate, and the other girls would definitely make fun of them. Instead, Zio gave her boyfriend the task of recruiting more people to join them. Wei Jiangyang was not very hopeful. Zhang Heng was the kind of person who stayed away from large groups and rarely joined group activities. This guy had his own rhythm in life. However, to Wei Jiangyang's surprise, Zhang Heng agreed. Previously, Zhang Heng would never be caught red-handed participating in activities like this. But after spending such a long time away from society, he needed lively environments to heal himself. Although Ma Wei had opted out, he was most likely to spend his entire day in the library, only returning to the room at lights out, like he did every day. So, if Zhang Heng were to stay, he would have to spend the whole weekend alone in the dorm. "That's great," Wei Jiangyang chirped. "Other than Zio, all her other roommates are still single. Don't say I never gave you the heads up. The Shen Zixi performing in this year's welcoming party tonight is also from their dorm. Oh, I forgot you're not going. Anyway, what you need to know is that whenever she sings, the boys would fall head over heels for her. She's the most popular girl in her department." It was obvious Zhang Heng bore no interest in these departmental celebrities. With so many things happening one after the other, he was not inclined to think about romance. He agreed to the camping purely for the fun of it. Considering he did not have any classes scheduled on Friday afternoons, Zhang Heng decided to prepare ahead of time for the game next month. Back at the Express Hotel, he had already completed preliminary planning and made adjustments to his schedule. After lunch, he found a 24-hour gym nearby and immediately signed up for a membership card. On top of that, he had also increased his rock climbing and running hours. Since he did not know what he would be facing next, the safest option would be to improve his physical fitness. Also, in every game, he would be using his own body. In other words, different levels of physical fitness could bring completely different gaming experiences. For example, during the Desert Island survival game, where the players were given the option to save the people drowning in the ocean, the person with an average fitness would be able to save Eid, whereas those who were stronger could save the guy in shorts and Belle who were further away. Of course, the most pitiful ones were those who did not know how to swim at all. As a result, they could only watch from the safety of the shore. For the most part, Zhang Heng's fitness was considered average among the students of the university, as he had never undergone any targeted science-based training. But he did have his own advantage, having double the preparation time compared to the other players. They only had a month between each game, but he had 2. If the 2 months were used well, he could improve his fitness by a lot. The thought of joining taekwondo or boxing classes did cross his mind, but one couldn't rush these kinds of things. He would have to tackle them one by one, starting by working on his foundation first. After all, those skills could be practiced in the game as well. The following week was spent with a full schedule. He had begun training the strength of his waist, back, arms, and legs. He even took up flexibility training in the gym. On top of his endurance training long runs, he included sprints that tested his explosive force in his training plan. He also made time to visit the Sex and the City Bar during Still Time 1. That place was filled with secrets. Having been inside the game himself, Zhang Heng was naturally intrigued and wanted to know more about it. Since he got only scarce information out of the bartender lady, he decided to take matters into his own hands. He should at least be able to uncover some clues from the furnishing and decoration of the sheet metal room and the collection behind the bar. Also, he really wanted to find out if the rule about not seeing the other players still applied during still time. However, when Zhang Heng arrived at the bar, an inexplicable feeling of panic overcame him, which only grew more intense the moment he placed his hand on the handle of the metal door. Zhang Heng hesitated for a moment when he suddenly decided to let go of the handle. He did not know where this warning came from, but the message it conveyed was very clear. Do not attempt to enter the game venue at siesta. Even though he was burning with curiosity, Zhang Heng decided to play it safe. After all, whatever he was facing could not be explained with logic. That was how Zhang Heng's first secret exploration was brought to an end, not managing to gather much useful information. It was already Monday when during class, his phone suddenly vibrated. Glancing at the message, it turned out to be from customer service. Your item has been delivered to your desk in your room. This is a notification message. Please do not reply. Zhang Heng put his phone under the table and typed as stealthily as he could. What about my game checkpoint service list? He tapped on send, and after a while the bartender replied, Oops, I forgot. I'll send it to you once I'm done dealing with the matter at hand. Chapter 24, Different Person. Name, Lucky Rabbit's Foot. Quality, G. Usage, increases luck for the wearer by a small margin. Back in the real world, that mysterious voice and the so-called character panel were absent. Zhang Heng stared at the card with the bartender's handwriting, speechless. Such short and simple words cost him 5 game points. Even though he had a decent amount of points, he could tell that it was not cheap, having seen how excited the bartender was when she'd received the points. Zhang Heng was not the least bit surprised by the results of the identification. A rabbit's foot was an amulet believed to bring good luck in many cultures. This item was probably responsible for how his wound remained uninfected back on the island. His doubled time aside, this was the first supernatural item he possessed. Taking into account its positive effects, Zhang Heng decided to wear it as a keychain. Who would know how much that little bit of luck actually was? Since he had nothing else to do, Zhang Heng decided to experiment with something. He went to the Walmart next to the library and bought 2 scratch cards costing him 20 yuan. One of them won him 10 yuan and the other 5 yuan. After subtracting the principal, he sustained a 5 yuan loss. After that, Zhang Heng went to another supermarket. Out of the 2 he bought, one said, "Thanks for your patronage," and the other one won him 20 yuan. He had broken even. Now, Zhang Heng had now somewhat understood the lucky rabbit's effectiveness. He had initially hoped that his earnings would be higher than average, but alas, he still sustained a loss. Although his luck did improve, it was nothing to rave about. Any intentions of using this little bit of luck to earn money would prove to be quite the challenge. As he was leaving the supermarket after completing the experiment, Zhang Heng spotted a young couple under a tree nearby. The guy was trying hard to explain something, but the girl kept shaking her head. When the guy reached out to pull the girl in, she sidestepped him instead. Zhang Heng looked away. He was not about to meddle in other people's business. Things like that practically happened every day in school. The university was the gathering of a cesspool of hormones, where all kinds of drama occurred all the time. That being said, Zhang Heng did not have to worry about the guy doing anything beyond the pale because it was broad daylight, and they were within school grounds. Any scream whatsoever would draw the sense of overzealous young men, pouncing to save the damsel in distress. So off to the library, Zhang Heng went. At noon on Friday, Zhang Heng bought some snacks and outdoor supplies, its contents some mosquito-repellent spray, towels, and band-aids. Zhang Heng had already rented the camping gear and car. Its costs split evenly among those who were going. It was 300 yuan apiece. Any overpayment was refunded and imperfections reimbursed. Zhang Heng was checking his camera to make sure the batteries were full when Chen Huadong and Wei Jiangyang walked into the room carrying large and small bags. "The girls bought these. It's tonight's dinner. Help us load them into the car later." "Sure, thanks," exclaimed Zhang Heng, who was pretty much all packed up. Wei Jiangyang deposited the bag he was carrying onto the table. He guzzled down the glass of water on the table, then heaved a long sigh. "I've been so busy these 2 days, running around all day working myself to the ground like a horse. You guys are the wiser ones. Come to think of it, being single isn't all that bad." "No, please, child Wei. Thanks to you, I am only beginning to see a ray of light. Don't pour cold water on me so soon," Chen Huadong said with a twinkle in his eyes. "You're going after Shen Zixi." Wei Jiangyang glared at his friend from the corner of his eyes. No, brother, I know my limits all right. She's like the public relations department's #1 wholesaler of the good person card one. Just too many guys are falling into unrequited love for her. I'm not going to be part of that madness. I don't mind give up this treasure that is Shen Zixi for our child Zhang to conquer. Personally, I much prefer Su Jiang, Chen Huadong grinned. The hell? I knew you liked that kind, you pervert. Su Jiang is a legit lowly, a popular one at that. The only thing that she's quite poor at managing herself. She only learned how to take the subway when she came to university. In fact, until now, she would at times go in the wrong direction, or even miss a stop. Also, she washes her clothes and socks in a washing machine. That's not a problem at all. Adorkable Ness is justice one. You know me, brother, I've been a loyal love develops two fan for so many years. Chen Huadong pushed his sparkling glasses up the bridge of his nose. How inhumane and immoral. Where is the 1101 when you need them? Wei Jiangyang exclaimed in distress before turning to Zhang Heng. Shen Zixi is pretty good, though. You won't even consider it. Most girls despise those who are popular with the guys, but Shen Zixi is an exception. In fact, Zio said the girl she admires most is Shen Zixi. She's pretty, is an ace at studies, sings well, and is quite genuine with people. She may have rejected many guys, but she has never kept them as spare tires too. It's always a clean rejection. That's why she's been given the nickname Kill M All One. Chen Huadong chuckled. But after getting to know her a little, I find her not too bad. She has been the one among the girls who's been taking care of the trip. When we went to get the stuff for the camp just now, she tried talking to us, and we even enjoyed a few laughs, not the slightest bit of arrogance. I guess you can never completely trust spreading rumors, added Chen Huadong, plainly singing a different tune this time. Are you guys done talking? Zhang Heng chipped in. Almost, don't worry. Our relationship has come to an end. I have always known that this day would come, Chen Huadong stubbornly retorted. Why don't the both of you spend your free time by paying some attention to current international affairs instead? Why are you always so concerned about my love life? Wei Jiangyang and Chen Huadong looked at each other. They whispered in a grave tone, Zhang Heng, we're a little worried for you. I always thought that you're the kind of person who plays by his own rhythm, completely unaffected by the outside world. But since last week, we've felt this new, inexplicable edginess out of you. Chen Huadong joined in. I know this sounds a little melodramatic, but right now, you give off this vibe of loneliness that seems to come from deep within your bones. Do you know how many recluses there are on Jiangnan Mountains one? That's the kind of feeling you're giving me. Be honest with us, brother. Has something happened to you? Why are you suddenly so withdrawn? The words struck a chord in Zhang Heng's heart. Of course, he knew what had happened to him. No one was as withdrawn from the world as he was, spending over a year all alone on a deserted island where even his toothbrush was self-made left him with a tremendous feeling of loneliness. Even though he had returned to the real world, physically unchanged, that period spent in isolation had left him an entirely different person. Had experience and learning shaped us into who we are today? Drifting along with his thoughts, Zhang Heng recalled the bartender's words and was suddenly intrigued. If he continued playing this game for many years to come, what would he be like when it ended? Would he a completely different person from who he was today? Chapter 25, Shen Zixi. The minibus Wei Jiangyang booked had just arrived downstairs. The three boys loaded the vehicle with the camping equipment and food they had prepared. Zhang Heng checked out his SF recurve bow from the shooting range the day before. After about a week of practice, his skills were almost fully recovered. With the help of modern technology, he was able to hit ring 9 at 50 meters. But Zhang Heng's specialty was shooting moving targets, although it all depended on the target's speed and the trajectory. One particular thing bugged him. He kept feeling that a pair of resentful eyes were gazing at him, which made him a little hesitant to unleash his full potential. By and large, he had to wait for still time to find a place for practice. Now that an opportunity to traverse the wilderness had presented itself, he could find a serene place to practice his archery skills. Child Zhang, if anything dangerous happens, you have to protect me first, Chen Huadong trilled jokingly. Zhang Heng did not keep his archery lessons a secret from his roommates. All of them knew that he'd just started. In fact, only a week ago and had even searched the net for tutorial videos. How much progress could he have made? All right, don't forget to fall into my arms when it happens. They chatted and laughed as they repeated up and down the stairs. Finally, after loading everything into the back of the van, the three girls made their way to them. Chen Huadong gave Zhang Heng a nudge with his elbow and said, "The one on the left is Shen Zixi." Zhang Heng looked in the direction his friend pointed at and saw a tall girl. Wei Jiangyang sure wasn't lying when he said that her physical condition was good. She had the body of a model and was easy on the eyes. Not to mention that, unlike the coquettish superstars on the television and magazines, there was purity in her eyes. There was none of that pretentious, deliberate girl shyness on her. It was no wonder that she was the girl of so many boys' dreams. The Public Relations Department's number 1 good person card wholesaler. Shen Zixi flipped out 3 bottles of water from her bag and handed them to the 3 boys. She piped excitedly, "Thank you for the hard work, guys." Zhang Heng accepted the bottle and thanked her. It was the little things that told a lot about a person's upbringing. It was apparent that Shen Zixi did not consider the 3 boys as free labor and personal bodyguards, nor did she think that just because she was a girl, letting the boys do the heavy lifting was by default. Such qualities on a woman, especially a beautiful one, was more than hard to come by. Chen Huadong continued to play the role of an inept, fumbling advisor. He whispered into Zhang Heng's ear, "It's been said that Shen Zixi's father is a university lecturer and her mother is a novel translator. Seems like a good family. So, what do you think? Child Zhang, I believe your families are well matched." The person that Wei Jiangyang was waiting for was missing. He could not help but ask himself, "Where's Zia Xiao? Why isn't she here yet?" Ha ha ha, each time we go out, that woman is the most troublesome of all. Putting her makeup on takes forever. Wei Jiangyang, you will suffer when you marry her, laughed the shortest girl among the 3. Standing between the 2 other girls, she attained a humble 1.5 meters give or take. Needless to say, she was the legal lowly Su Jiang that Chen Huadong had eyes for. She had only just finished when someone smacked her over the head. I'm sorry you had to hear that. I will make sure to discipline this child," Shen Zixi told Wei Jiangyang, keeping a straight face. The atmosphere was just starting to feel a little warmer when they suddenly heard a voice call out, "Zixi." It was then that the girl's expressions immediately changed. "Zixi, are you and your roommates going out to have fun? Why didn't you tell me? I could send you there." A flashy chilly red BMW 5 Series sports sedan pulled to a stop next to the group. The guy driving the car pulled the handbrake and stepped out. Zhang Heng's eyebrows raised. He was wondering why Shen Zixi looked so familiar. Apparently, they had met earlier on when he was leaving the supermarket after buying the scratch cards. Now, he recognized the couple he saw. It was Shen Zixi and this guy clad in a Supreme t-shirt. Cheng, why are you here again? Zixi has already rejected you so many times. Why haven't you taken a hike already? Unlike her name, Su Jiang was a straightforward girl who did not keep her thoughts to herself. This blatant announcement that exposed his rejection had put a dent to Cheng's dignity and cut his face. But because Su Jiang was a girl, it would be embarrassing if he threw any tantrums. Instead, the Fuadai swallowed his anger. "Zixi, can I talk to you for a moment? It'll just be nearby. I know a coffee shop with excellent Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee," said Cheng. Shen Zixi frowned. Even the ordinarily good-tempered girl was starting to lose her patience. She and Cheng had been strangers until that welcoming party for freshmen. That very night, after performing a song, Cheng approached her and had been coaxing and pestering her for more than half a month since. From flowers, snacks, and fruits, to an iPhone and concert tickets, Cheng would entrust some girl to leave them at Shen Zixi's dormitory door. But this modus operandi that had worked so well on every other girl failed miserably on Shen Zixi. The gifts that he had given her were always returned to him untouched, and Shen Zixi also made it very clear to him that she was not interested in being in a relationship right now. This rejection, though, seemed to only fuel Cheng's zeal. He even toned down his lordly attitude. Shen Zixi's parents had always taught her to be polite and respectful. Now, When she found herself in an exasperating situation, she found it difficult to be abrasive, ergo, causing her to continuously be the recipient of Cheng Cheng's persistent badgering. There were even rumors about the both of them going around the school, which gave Shen Zixi a massive headache. What's more, she seemed to be running into Cheng Cheng a lot recently. How did he find out about their plans to go camping? Was it not too much of a coincidence that he showed up just as they were about to depart? Shen Zixi glanced at the girl called Wang Huan who was standing behind Su Jiang. The girl shot an embarrassed smile back at her. Wang Huan hailed from a middle-class family, but a few days ago, a stick of YSL lipstick magically appeared in her drawer. The aspiring detective of a Su Jiang looked up the price of the lipstick and found that to own one, a princely sum 700–800 yuan would have to be forked out. Owing to that, everyone jeered at Wang Huan, asking her if she was a mistress to some wealthy merchant. But now, it seems that her lipstick had come from somewhere else. Against the odds, Shen Zixi had no intention to pursue this issue. When she saw that Zia Exil had left the dormitory and was approaching them, she turned to Cheng Cheng and stated sternly, "Cheng Cheng, haven't we already talked on Monday? I don't really drink coffee and we're leaving right about now." "Never mind, they can go first. I'll send you there later. Don't worry, I won't take up too much of your time," retorted a relentless Cheng Cheng. Chen Huadong could not hold it back any longer and was about to speak up when Wei Jiangyang shot him a sharp look. "Don't provoke this guy," Ao Jiangyang said under his breath. Chen Huadong pursed his lips. "Why, isn't he just a Fuadai? Look at our child Zhang, now that's the model Fuadai." Zhang Heng shook his head. "Nonsense, I'm not a Fuadai." Zhang Heng came from similar financial circumstances as Shen Zixi, both intellectual types, comfortable enough to not worry about what they ate or wore. They were considered pretty well off compared to the average person, but they were not in the same league as those ultra-rich tycoons. Wei Jiangyang smiled acridly. "This Cheng Cheng is not an easy person to deal with. He's a troublemaker. He's our senior by a year. When he first came to university, he got into a fight with a senior. His family appears to be in the hotel business. He spends lavishly and has quite a following. The student union is a disorganized mess of a pestilence thanks to him. Zio was so averse to his ways that she quit the student union." Chapter 26, Journey. Fuadai is just a label. On its own, it carried no derogatory connotations. For people who were either good or bad, they were further classified into superior and inferior. Objectively speaking, compared to the average person, these children of the nouveau rich had the privilege of enjoying better educational resources, therefore turning most of them into the superior kind. But why do Fuadais have such a bad reputation? It was only a simple explanation, though. The average person's vice was smaller, perhaps only affecting those around the individual. By comparison, due to the Fuadai having control over more resources, the repercussions would often be more severe once they committed any wrongdoing, descending into an entire series of problems for the society. Take Cheng Cheng, for example. Although his sins were not that grave, many people in school condemned him. When he joined the student union in his freshman year, he quickly turned the school into his territory. In a matter of months, he had already dominated all elections, causing the old council members who disapproved of him to withdraw from the union. By his sophomore year, he became the president, and all the newly promoted council members were all his people. He basically dictated the entire student union. Birds of a feather flocked together. When he was recruiting people, he would continuously pay extra attention to the prettier girls. Once they joined the union, he would covertly appoint his subordinates to deliberately make things difficult for the girl. Then, he would use his position in the student union to settle this matter, making him the hero nobody had asked for. One thing led to another, and many of the innocent freshmen took the bait. Eventually, while they were discussing matters of the school, they would somehow or rather end up in his bed. There was a rumor going around that by the time Cheng Cheng was in his second year, that more than 5 girls had undergone abortion because of him. One even threatened to commit suicide, but the matter was eventually resolved with an undisclosed sum. Of course, It was a sensational amount. At the end of the day, plenty of people disapproved of Cheng Cheng. After hearing about all these, Chen Huadong, who had initially planned to speak his mind, found himself on the horns of a dilemma. He did not work at Cheng Cheng's family hotel, and it did not matter to him whether or not Cheng Cheng was a Fuadai. However, after finding out about how Cheng Cheng dominated the student union, he could not reconsider his decision. As there was no student league in their school, club funds had to be first approved by the student union before it was reported to the teachers. On top of that, the student union was also in charge of the periodic assessment of each club. During their freshman year, Chen Hua Dong and few guys set up an anime club called Tiger Shark, which had been doing pretty well so far. Although their club had only a few girl members, a group of pansy guys coming together to exchange mysterious codes and indecent material was good fun. If he were to offend Cheng Cheng, Chen Huadong had to think about the problems Tiger Shark would be facing. To top it all off, the school had a rule that required everyone to participate in morning exercises for a set number of times. No surprises there, as the ones in charge of taking attendance was the student union as well. In summary, the student union was the kind you would usually not notice, but if you rubbed them the wrong way, it would be problematic, to say the least. Cheng Cheng had quite a substantial number of followers to begin with. Chen Huadong finally decided to pursue a relationship with Su Jiang because he did not want to have to walk around on eggshells every day, always on the lookout for anyone who might want to beat him up. Shen Zixi was looking kind of helpless. She had already said everything she could say. Most people would have given up already, but Cheng Cheng did not have the slightest intention of letting go. Next to them, it appeared that the Wang Huan girl realized she had done something wrong and kept her head down saying nothing. In the end, Zhang Heng broke the awkward silence. "Excuse me, your fly is open." Cheng Cheng looked down and saw the gap in his pants on his groin. Even though his underwear was not visible, it was still somewhat indecent. Zhang Heng would have been better off not mentioning it at all. He could have pretended not to notice it. Now that it was pointed out, he did not know if he should pull up his zip in front of everyone. It was the most awkward of situations. Cheng Cheng stared at Zhang Heng for a while before telling Shen Zixi, "Zixi, someday I will make you understand how I feel about you." At that, he quickly hurried back into the safety of his BMW. If you pay attention to the way he was walking, you could see how unnatural his movement was, as if he dared not stretch his legs. "Hurry, hurry, let's go," Zio implored. "Once he gets his zipper up, he'll come back to intrude." Like bats scurrying out of hell, everyone piled into the minibus, hastening the driver to scoot as they slammed the door shut. Su Jiang was in fits of laughter. "Ha ha ha, did you see that guy face? Oh, it's too funny." When she finally caught her breath, she imitated Cheng Cheng's tone. Zai, someday I will make you understand how I feel about you." The legal loli made sheep's eyes at Shen Zixi as she spoke. Everyone exploded into laughter. Zio covered her mouth. "Enough, stop talking, it's so disgusting. He's a bastard who specializes in deceiving freshman girls. What the hell was all that innocent love act?" Shen Zixi looked at Zhang Heng apologetically. "I'm sorry, you got involved because of me." Zhang Heng shook his head. "It's no problem, I'm not part of any student clubs." Because of her boyfriend, out of the four girls, Zio was the most familiar with Zhang Heng and the others in her boyfriend's dorm. Last semester, they even hung out a couple of times over skewered barbecue meat. Somehow, someway, she seemed to be influenced by Wei Jiangyang and became very interested in her roommate's love life. She turned to Shen Zixi and said, "Zixi, didn't you want a band? You should consider Zhang Heng. He's really good at the piano. You know Paganini's La Campanella, right? This guy could play it with his eyes closed." Zhang Heng was getting tired of the rumor, having constantly heard it around his extremities. But before he could deny the gossip, Wei Jiangyang carried on. Yeah, Zhang Heng loves working out. He runs 10 kilometers every morning and he's part of the rock climbing society and is aiming for the K21 peak now. Oh, and he has also learned archery since he was 5. The bow never leaves his side. His skills surpass all. People call him the Zhang Sun 2 from Water Margin 3. It's actually little Li Guanghua wrong 1. Zio buried her face in her hands. The legal lowly, another a mischief maker, chipped in chirping. I did say that when I first laid eyes on Zhang Heng, I could tell that he's a gallant and intelligent person. He's so much better than that Cheng who can't even zip his pants. Chen Huadong was a little slow on the uptake. Whatever that had to be said had already been said. It took him the better part of the day to come up with something. Eventually, he said, Zhang Heng loves small animals too. Frequently, after dining in the canteen, he would always keep the fish bones and then bury them in a nice, quiet place. Hey, that's enough. If you want to make up stories, you should at least be thoughtful about it. Everyone laughed. The glumness accompanying Cheng's appearance was suddenly gone, and everyone was in a chatty mood again. In this age, when guys and girls come together, there was constant teasing and goofing, instinctively unleashing their youthfulness without much care or thought. After Shen Zixi had heard everyone's presentation of Zhang Heng, she found herself a little intrigued by him. But that was it. She gave him a friendly nod, and then turned to the despondent Wang Huan and began chatting with her. Likewise, Zhang Heng thought nothing else of Shen Zixi. She seemed like a pleasant girl who made people feel comfortable around her. He, however, did not harbor any romantic feelings towards her. Dark shadows flitted past as he looked out the window. Sometimes he also wondered, what kind of girl did he like? Chen Huadong had always been legal lowly-file, and Wei Jiangyang preferred girls like Zio who appeared to be tough on the outside but, at the same time, also gentle deep down inside. It seemed like everyone knew for sure what they wanted, yet he could not even begin to describe his type. But for all that, Zhang Heng somehow believed that he would be able to tell when he meets the right person. Chapter 27, Camping. At 5 in the evening, the minibus arrived at the camping destination. Everyone unloaded their stuff from the trunk and bid the driver a cheerful goodbye. When these city-bred students saw the foothill nearby covered in lush greenery, sheltered by the blue skies and white clouds, they were ecstatic. Su Jiang was especially eager. Wow, this place is not bad at all. We should come here every weekend. Zio retorted, does your family's money fall from the skis? 300 yuan. I can't afford coming here every week. Knock it off, it's going to be dark soon. We need to find a place to set up tents and cook. Shen Zixi chided. Su Jiang giggled. I don't know how to cook, I'm only responsible for the eating. Fine, exchange your cuteness for food then. The group chatted as the chortling continued, the mood light and cheerful. The girls were the ones who had chosen the camping location, mainly Zio idea, situated in a less popular and crowded area. She had a backpack traveler uncle who enjoyed traveling on foot and was familiar with the uncultivated mountains nearby. The girl had badgered her uncle into providing her a list of unspoilt locations with breathtaking views. Even better, the visitors there were few and far between. There was none of that hubbub and chaos. Sad to say, except for Zio who had gone camping with her uncle once or twice when she was younger, all the others did not have any camping experience whatsoever. To make matters worse, Zio was only occupied with playing at that age, her uncle completely handling the bonfire building and cooking business. As a result, even choosing a place to set up the tents proved to be a challenge for the group of coddled university students. Everyone seemed to be in disagreement. One said that it should be at the top of the mountain, the other that it should be somewhere sheltered from the wind. Then someone also added that they had to watch out for falling rocks. In the end, Zhang Heng could not stand watching the conversation going nowhere, so he said, this place nearby is not dangerous. It's summer now, so we don't worry about keeping warm. We can choose whichever place to set up camp and it'll be fine for sure. Predictably, everyone ignored him. Immersed in the excitement of playing house in the open air, they found Zhang Heng's make-do attitude to be unacceptable. It was almost sundown, and after careful and elaborate deliberation, they finally settled for an open space by the foot of the hill. To say the least, the spot they had chosen was pretty good. It had an expansive view, and other than being a little further from the water, it had no other faults. However, the problem was that the sky was starting to turn dark, and their tents were still unbuilt. Such a task must not be undermined. For a novice, setting up a tent was extremely technically challenging. Inserting the tent poles into the sleeves, stringing the ropes, staking the pegs into the ground, and then guying out the tent to stabilize it. Without any experience, it would take the novice a long time to figure out single step. Fortunately, this did not prove to be a problem for the Zhang Heng, as he had built a house with his bare hands before. He nearly built up the 3 tents entirely all by himself. Even up to the last one, he was made up the steps as he went along. Su Jiang clapped her hands. "All right, Zhang Heng. The next time I'm stranded on a desert island and can only choose one person to come with me, I will choose you. You're so bad, even on a deserted island you're going to make someone your scapegoat." Chen Huadong clicked his tongue. "I've seen a few wilderness survival shows. It would still be useless even if it were the whole group of us on that island." Wei Jiangyang shook his head. Zhang Heng merely smiled and said nothing. No one took this kind of idle chatter to heart. Just then an idea popped into Su Jiang's mind. "It's already dark now. Let's have a campfire party." It was like this girl, never worried a day in her life. "Campfire my ass, let's eat first, I'm starving to death," Zio grumbled. Only Shen Zixi was able to lend Zhang Heng some help when he was setting up the tent. As the others simply could not get the mechanics of pitching a tent, they took the initiative to prepare dinner on the other side instead. In the civilized world, there was no need to start a fire using the bow and drill method, not even in the wilderness. Only a portable cassette furnace for outdoor use would be needed. It was ready for use once the gas cartridge was inserted, a very convenient alternative. Naturally, Zhang Heng was glad to see that thing. He came to have fun, not to show off his skills. Any survival skills he possessed were to be used to protect lives in the event of emergencies. If only he had a lighter on the island, he would not have to chafe off the skin on his hands to get fire. Dinner that night was hot pot, the most convenient outdoors menu for large, noisy, hormone-enraged students. First, the base ingredients. Then chuck in washed vegetables and meat all together. There. Done. When Zhang Heng had finished building the tent, the group sat around the hot pot in a circle with single-use plastic bowls in their hands, watching and waiting for bubbles to form. To many of them, it was a refreshing feeling. In the summer, the temperature in the mountains was just right, not too hot and not too cold. It was much more comfortable than the stuffy, unair-conditioned dorm room. The only thing that seemed to take comfort there were the hordes of blood-sucking vampiric mosquitoes. Zhang Heng and Shen Zixi took out mosquito repellents from their bags almost simultaneously. Seeing this, they smiled at each other. "Why isn't the meat done yet?" Su Jiang muttered pitifully. Just a while ago, she was still demanding a campfire party, and now she was more concerned about the meat in the pot than anyone else. A mischievous Chen Huadong was about to make fun of her when a rustling noise came from the woods nearby. That alone had pushed timid Su Jiang into a panicked frenzy. "My God, are there wild beasts in these mountains?" "No, there are none," said a startled Zio. Although the place was not a tourist attraction, it was close to the city. In the autumn, many photography enthusiasts would come here to visit. They also spotted other campers not far from where they were earlier on. If there were wild beasts here, it made no sense that no one had ever seen them before. As soon as she had spoken, something scurried out of the woods. The beast turned out to be not an animal, but just a person. However, before they could breathe a sigh of relief, the outward appearance of the trespasser unsettled them. His was a rowdy-looking youth lined with tattoos on his arm. The young man smiled mischievously at the group and said, "Oh, I knew I smelt something fragrant coming from somewhere. Turns out there's something tasty here. Count me in. It just so happens that I haven't had dinner yet." When the trespasser had finished talking, Zhang Heng got up, turned around and went into his tent. The youth smiled at that. Okay, smart. Now that I have a place to sit, I'll just help myself then. Everyone could see that this lad had ill intentions. Wei Jiangyang and Chen Huadong shared a look. This was the perfect time for the guys to step up their game. Wei Jiangyang spoke first. Dude, we're not used to eating with strangers. No problem, I can introduce myself first. We can all be friends. A little chat and we'll get to know each other. The youth grinned as he reached into his pocket and took out a folding knife. Wei Jiangyang's and Chen Huadong's face fell, and Su Jiang looked like she had just seen a ghost. They were all university students. They had never been in a situation like this before. Fights were rare back in campus. Even if a quarrel did get physical, no one had ever used a knife. Everyone's heart sank at the next announcement as the young man declared, I have 3 other friends who hadn't eaten too. They'll be here soon, but it looks like there's not enough space. He looked around and then pointed at Wei Jiangyang, Chen Huadong, and Wang Yuan. Why don't the 3 of you give up your spots to them? Chapter 28, 2 Arrows. Wei Jiangyang and Chen Huadong trembled in the presence of the folding knife. It would have been fine if they were just being robbed. At most, they would have to give up their possessions, and no one would be harmed, but from the way the young man was acting, they could tell that he had other intentions for the girls. The girls in Zio's dorm, except for Wang Yuan, were not bad-looking, not to mention Shen Zixi, who was generally acknowledged as the prettiest girl in the public relations department. Zio was in the school's volleyball team and had always maintained a perfect physique. Needless to say, Su Jin, the legal loli, was a magnet for perverts. Normally, neither of them had to worry about their safety in school, but this was the wilderness, the outward bounds. Even though there were other campers in the area, they were too far from them. Even if they cried for help, there was a good chance no one would be able to get here in time. The girls were beginning to regret coming out here. They had already done their research and found that there were villages nearby, leading them to presume that it was quite safe. Why were they so unlucky this time? Wei Jiangyang could feel his forehead growing damp. His girlfriend was behind him, he could not retreat, but being afraid when in such scary situations like this was a normal reaction. As the youth moved towards him, Wei Jiangyang froze and his throat went dry. The very next moment, however, something sliced through the darkness. The youth paused. In front was an arrow with its tip buried deep into the ground, its fletching still quivering. It was a shot at an ungodly speed. Zhang Heng was standing in front of the tent with his recurve bow. He did not stop after the first shot. Swiftly, he drew the second arrow. Before Wei Jiangyang and the others could cheer for him, the second arrow overshot by 10,000 meters, hitting a small tree far away. Zhang Heng's friends were dismayed, thinking to themselves that it was over. They had hoped that the shot would frighten the intruder away. They did not expect Zhang Heng give away the game so quickly. The young man was also taken aback by the first arrow. The country had strict firearms control, so in the general run of things, bows and crossbows were the most powerful long-range weapons people had access to. He did think there would be a bowman in this group. But that second shot missed him by at least a few meters. Was the first one a lucky shot? The youth subconsciously turned around to see where the last arrow had landed, and was immediately alerted because his mates were hiding behind that tree. These first 2 shots are just a warning. If you don't leave, the third arrow will draw blood, Zhang Heng said calmly. The expression on the youth's face changed. Everyone else was bowled over. The youth was about 3-4 meters away from Wei Jiangyang and Chen Huadong. He was computing in his head if he could grab either one of them as hostages. He had second thoughts, not sure if Zhang Heng would actually do it. In the end, he chose to put away his knife and raised his hands. I apologize for interrupting. It looks like my friends and I will have to go elsewhere to make friends. He glared at Zhang Heng as he spoke, and then slowly backed away, until he disappeared between the darkness of the trees. Well, the incident was over, but everyone had lost their appetite. They quickly packed up their things and wanted to leave the place, but there was no taxi in this suburbia. Zio was still worried that the strange guy would harass the other campers, so one of them called the police while the others went around to inform other vacationers. Shenzixi opened her mouth to say something, but decided to keep it to herself. After the danger was over, the other girls gathered around Zhang Heng. Su Jiang stuck out her tongue and said, "That's impressive, fellow student Zhang. I thought you ran away because you were scared. Turns out Iron Man was summoning his armor." Chen Huadong joined the conversation. "Big brother, I must say I'm impressed. The second shot was way off course, yet you could still stand there and threaten him so boldly. Respect, respect. Apparently those degenerates are easily frightened. They saw you holding a bow and off they went running for their lives. But really, thank you for that. I was so scared I almost died," continued a very relieved Zio. "To thank your hero, I have made the executive decision to betroth the prettiest girl in our dorm to you," Su Jiang concluded. Suddenly, she received another smack across the head. But after that, Shen Zixi also thanked Zhang Heng. After informing the others scattered all over the campgrounds, the group gathered again, feeling a lot safer by the numbers. Zhang Heng put down his bow and opened up his backpack, distributing a bunch of snacks that did not require cooking to everyone. While taking a bite out of her custard pie, Su Jiang mumbled, "What a day full of action. It's my first time camping and it may very well be my last." With food filling their stomachs, the group was feeling much better, and they began discussing the precarious situation they were in just a while ago. It was then that out of the blue, Shen Zixi said, "Zhang Heng, can I talk to you?" "MMM." The pair stepped away from their friends' bemused gazes. Shen Zixi thanked Zhang Heng again for the night, saying, "Did you notice?" "Notice what?" "That guy didn't look like he's from the villages around here. He's probably from the city like us." "You're saying that the guy came here tonight just to look for women to assault?" "No, if he was prepared, he wouldn't be dressed like that. The shoes on his feet were an Adidas Coconut 500. It's at least 2,000 yuan and above for the authentic one. He would not have willingly worn those here and risked having his sneakers scraped by twigs and branches. Also, when he was talking, he kept scratching at his neck. He must have gotten bitten by a lot of mosquitoes. If this was premeditated and he did not even prevent that, that was just too careless. So chances are, he came here at the last minute." "That's a very detailed observation." Zhang Heng looked surprised. "Most people would not have noticed so many fine details in that situation." "Aren't you the same?" Shen Zixi answered softly. "I didn't notice any of that." Zhang Heng shook his head. "I don't know much about shoes. I was busy paying attention to his friends in the woods. I didn't notice his little movements. If you didn't mention it, I really would not have known." Shen Zixi was taken aback slightly. "Then, why have you been keeping an eye on Wang Huan?" Because when the guy appeared, her reaction was a little too intense. Everyone was paralyzed by shock and fear, but she was very, very frightened. After the guy left, everyone was so relieved, but she seemed even more alarmed instead. Shen Zixi smiled bitterly. "That is why I didn't agree with them calling the police. Even though she put everyone in danger tonight. Wang Huan has her share of problems. Cheng threatened her, telling her that if she refused to help, he wants her to reimburse him for the lipstick. Her parents were laid off a while ago and she has a younger brother at home. And just like you said, she didn't expect this to happen. She only sent our location to Cheng. All she thought was that he wanted to join us. She never expected the person someone like that to pop out. She was terrified, worried that police would find out." "You decide then." Zhang Heng declined to comment. They were all adults. They have to be responsible for their own actions. Circumstances and her family's situation may have induced her to behave that way, but it's no excuse for her wrongdoing. One straightforward justification. Society may not be just to you, but you can't go kill people in a kindergarten or set public transportation on fire just like that. However, Shen Zixi was the target here. Whatever she would decide to do was entirely up to her. Zhang Heng had no opinion on that. As for Cheng, he had an idea of what kind of game the guy was playing at, sort of, in light of the declining favorable impression between him and Shen Zixi. He probably wanted to play the hero and save the damsel in distress in this self-directed drama to make up for it. It, however, appeared that this guy had underestimated Shen Zixi's intelligence. At the moment, it did not look like they were on the same level. Shen Zixi let out a breath of relief. "I'm not a person who keeps forgiving. Wang Huan promised to move out of our dorms when we get back. We won't have any social interactions with each other. So that's how it's gonna be. You, on the other hand, will have to be very careful. Cheng wouldn't dare break the law, but he has no problem crossing the line. It's best if you don't leave the campus for the time being. I'll help you figure a way out of this." Chapter 29, Test of Friendship. Patrol cars sent the group was back to the city. Their statements were taken down, but unsurprisingly, the police could do very little about it. That was a small crime that did not result in anything serious, so they merely entertained them and warned other campers. Unless a similar incident were to happen again, they were not going to invest resources in conducting an investigation. An unavoidable situation, the officers already had plenty of cases piled up. Sorting the cases by priority was an essential skill of every officer. And just like that, the outing was ruined. By the time the group reached the campus, it was already close to midnight. They bid each other goodbye and returned to their respective rooms. Chen Huadong was in luck. Thanks to his heroic performance of standing his ground when the trespasser threatened him, he successfully obtained Su Jiang's phone number. With him setting the ball rolling, everyone else started to exchange contacts with each other. As soon as they returned to their room, the seats on their chairs still cold, the pair had already started hooking up. Shen Zixi sent Zhang Heng a text to remind him to be extra careful. Zhang Heng thought about it, and then politely replied thanks. He had only just sent the text when the world around him suddenly went eerily quiet. After more than a month, Zhang Heng was no stranger to this phenomenon. Setting the alarm on his phone to 7 hours, he climbed into bed. When he opened his eyes, the world was still steeped in darkness. Zhang Heng turned off his alarm and rolled out of bed. After making himself a cup of oats, he walked down the stairs with the cup. The caretaker lady arrived a little earlier than usual, already locking the main door the moment the clock struck 12. Zhang Heng went straight into the control room and very deftly fished out a set of keys. He proceeded to unlock the door. He dropped by Walmart first, grabbed a pineapple bun one from the rack, and then left the change on the cashier. It had actually been a long time since he'd done anything like this. Not since a terrified grandmother ran all the way home with her grandchild after hearing about the 12 o'clock rumor. He switched to stocking up his food before bed. This time was an exception due to an unforeseen circumstance. If Cheng had not interfered, he would still be out there camping. After he had finished his oats and bun, he left his cup on the supermarket's rack, then jogged to the 24-hour gym. By that time, the contents in his stomach were almost fully digested. He began his training with the water resistance rowing machine. 3 hours went by quickly. After that, he took a quick shower before checking himself into the rock climbing club. Finally, he wandered around the city on his daily tour with his camera. He was passing by a small hotel when a red BMW caught his eye. Zhang Heng stopped cycling as he slowly glanced at the license plate. It was Cheng's car. Zhang Heng was for all intents and purposes not bothered by this son of some wealthy tycoon. Like he had told Shen Zixi, he was not involved in any clubs or group activities and had very little interaction with the student union. If Cheng wanted to take down Zhang Heng, it would require quite a lot of effort on the former's part. Cheng might be famous in school, but he was no fool. It was because of money that they were willing to be his accomplices in tricking naive young girls. But if they had to give up their certificate of graduation for him, or even break the law, sorry, no one would do it. Outside school, on the other hand, even though that young man was not a member of any society. After Shen Zixi's cue, however, Zhang Heng realized that he was also another bored feudai with nothing to do like Cheng. That was just purely asking a friend for a favor, but these people were sometimes even more of a nuisance than thugs. They were willing to do almost anything for their face. Zhang Heng figured that since he had so fortuitously come upon him, it was best to get rid of this Trojan horse once and for all. He parked the shared bicycle by the building and walked into the hotel. He did not know where Cheng Cheng was, but that was not a problem as he easily accessed all customer information on the computer at the front desk. He found Cheng Cheng's name quickly, took down the room number and borrowed a set of spare keys. 2 minutes later, he pushed open the door into room 305. There was steam all over the glass door of the bathroom, but there was no sound of water. Zhang Heng could make out the silhouette of a girl, but he was not the kind to take advantage of situations like this. He immediately looked away and then continued into the room. There were clothes strewn everywhere. There was even a brassiere hanging from the television. On the bed, Cheng Cheng was naked except for an underwear, smoking while texting on WeChat. Zhang Heng plucked the phone from his hand and saw that the person he was chatting with was a guy called Wu Fan with a picture of a tattoo as his profile picture. Zhang Heng tried to recall to the intruder's tattoo but failed to realize anything significant. That was all right, though. Zhang Heng clicked on the contacts, scrolled down, and found the same picture. The owner of the WeChat account had taken a full body picture with his wardrobe, with a caption underneath, "Can't put the shoes down. What should I do?" The face on the picture belonged to the guy with the folding knife. Zhang Heng went back to the conversation page and then looked through the messages. It was almost exactly as he had guessed. Cheng Cheng was indeed the one who came up with the idea. He was nearby when it happened, ready to show up once he got the signal. He did not expect his plans to be disrupted by Zhang Heng. Forced home with a belly full of anger he couldn't vent, Cheng Cheng invited a junior he had wooed to go out on a date with him. Wu Fan asked Cheng Cheng if he wanted to try and push the bowman around for a bit. Out of caution and not kindness of the heart, Cheng Cheng replied that he would have to look into Zhang Heng first. After that, the conversation grew boring, delving into what club had awesome girls, which limited edition shoes were worth collecting, who managed to get the girl, or whose boobs were bigger, that kind of subject. Other than that, Zhang Heng also found out that Cheng Cheng was dabbling with recreational drugs and had tricked the girls he was with into doing them. Zhang Heng shook his head reprovingly. This guy had caused so much harm to other people. When Zhang Heng was done reading the dialogue, he created a new chat group which included Wu Fan and all the other contacts in the list which looked like feudais, and then began typing. "Wu Fan, that dumb fuck. I just need to bring up our friendship and loyalty to get him to do whatever I want. He will do anything I ask him to do. Now, he's as obedient as my dog." When he was finished composing the text, Zhang Heng even added an emoji with a coquettish smile and shades at the end, then hit the send button. He could foresee that, after 0 o'clock tonight, a solid friendship was about to face a brutal test. This, however, may not humble Cheng Cheng, so Zhang Heng decided to give him a warning. He did not do anything too inhumane. He was not a monster. He only gave Cheng Cheng some water to drink. After forcing down 2 bottles of water down Cheng Cheng's esophagus, Zhang Heng was worried that Cheng Cheng would not be satisfied, so he took another 2 from the front desk. Then, to prevent permanent damage to his nervous system from water intoxication, he took another 3 bottles of Pockery Sweat. In the end, though there was a bottle, Cheng Cheng's stomach had already grown a size larger, and when shaken, Zhang Heng could hear water slushing inside. To top it all off, Zhang Heng deleted all the apps in Cheng Cheng's phone before setting a Bride of Chucky picture as wallpaper. Finally, he left a grave message in the memo: "Think about what you've done." When it was all done, Zhang Heng jumped onto his little yellow bike, leaving the hotel behind to continue exploring the artistic path. Chapter 30, Round 2. Cheng Cheng was absent from school for 2 days. Word was that he was sent to the emergency ward in an ambulance. The doctor's final diagnosis was drowning. The strange thing was that Cheng Cheng claimed that he had been lying in bed in the hotel room and had no contact with any water at all. What was worse than his physical condition, however, was his mental state. He appeared to be suffering from severe psychological trauma, and was advised by the doctor to seek psychiatric help after his treatment. As a result, his parents spent a large sum of money to hire a world-famous expert, and after 2 sessions, he was finally stabilized. He was finally able to return to school a month later. A few close acquaintances even arranged a welcome-back reception in his honor. They were going to invite his side girl, but Cheng was too terrified after everything that had taken place that night. Although they had proven that he did not have any sexual contact with the girl who was in the shower, Cheng would rather have a small-time model come over than anyone from that day. That night, after a couple of beers and the company's admiration, Cheng's mood improved considerably and was willing to practice what the expert said, which turned out to be convincing himself that that was just a bad dream. Upon his return to university, he decided to restore his former glory and figure out a way to win Shen Zixi over. Humans were like that. They thought the harder it is to achieve something, the more valuable it must be. In the beginning, during the welcoming party, he thought that she was good-looking Singe, and had wanted to woo her just for the fun of it. But Shen Zixi would have none of it. She did not even give him a chance, which only made him even more obstinate in going after her. This matter quickly plagued him. As he was humping the small-time model, Cheng covered the poor girl's face with a pillow cover and imagined that she was Shen Zixi. This got him even more excited than usual. He kept at it for another 3 minutes before laying down, whereupon a rush of exhaustion flooded his head, and the tired Cheng closed his eyes and fell asleep immediately. He was jolted awake in the middle of the night, and he felt something resting on his face. When he opened his eyes, he saw the bride of Chucky's face resting against him. Goosebumps sprouted all over his terrified body. His screams not only wakened the model sleeping next to him, but had also startled the guests in the rooms downstairs. Cheng did not even bother to dress properly and left the room running and screaming for his life in his underwear. Alas, misery loves company. He was only a short distance away from the hotel when a minivan suddenly screeched to a halt in front of him. The door opened, and the tattooed youth grinned at him from the inside. "Brother Cheng, your little pug has come to bring you home." Then the passengers inside the van dragged the horrified Cheng into the vehicle. Following this, a 15-minute video of Cheng in a dog collar barking and scoffing down dog treats appeared on the university forum. Although it was quickly taken down by the school authorities, it had already left its severe, unerasable mark. The whole school was in a frenzy. Cheng's reputation was already on eggshells. Pretended indignance from the varmints in the student union aside, the reactions were mostly schadenfreude won from the common folk. A week later, Cheng's parents came to the school and, after applying leave for their son, left in a hurry. A rumor quickly spread around that they had sent their son overseas for treatment. Everything that happened after that no longer concerned Zhang Heng. In fact, after he had taken the time out to leave a warning for Cheng, he continued with his busy schedule. He simply threw in the doll in passing to keep Cheng busy from his boredom. Zhang Heng never in the slightest expected that the outcome would be so severe. Later on, Zhang Heng did go back, intentionally this time, to stick the haunted doll's face in the dark hotel room. The situation was undeniably quite scary. Cheng had already been frightened once before, and in his extremely fragile state, all it would take was one more scare and a complete mental breakdown would be no surprise. As for Wu Fan's appearance after that, Zhang Heng knew nothing of that. In short, this matter was considered closed. Zhang Heng did not actually spend much time and energy on Cheng. The harassment was done out of convenience. During this period, he had employed a new plan of action: attend classes and prepare for the next round of games. The results of his workout were a little more evident now. He was not seeking to have one of those muscular bodies, being more concerned about being pliable than being strong. He had now passed a beginner's level in rock climbing as well. The second game was drawing near. In theory, he could actually wait until the last day to join the game, but Zhang Heng did not want to cut it too close. What if he fell sick or sprained his ankle? That was a fun thought. So 5 days before the end of November, Zhang Heng returned to the Sex and the City bar. This time, He did not need to flash the number on his arm for the two burly men guarding the steps to let him pass. Zhang Heng thanked the gentleman and pushed the metal door open. The lounge was no different from the last time he visited, except the music had changed to jazz. The bartender looked to be in a pretty good mood. She was mixing some strange drink when she spotted Zhang Heng and greeted him. "How has this month been? What would you like to drink?" "Not bad, I won't be having any drinks." Then, as reading his mind, she pushed the freshly made masterpiece in front of him. "You don't think it's this lemon water that you passed out the last time, do you? Even if you did nothing, you would still enter the game the same way. Last time, you said the time was fixed only for the first game. I have the freedom to choose after that, right?" The bartender pointed at something nearby. "Do you see that booth? Each one of them has an alarm clock. Take a seat at one of them and adjust the time to your liking. When it's time, the game will start." "Thank you, but I won't need the booze. The game starts soon, so it's better for me to stay sober." "This is not a cocktail, just a mix of fruit juices." The bartender raised a brow at him. Her patience obviously pushed a notch further. Zhang Heng had the good sense to pick up the glass filled with the unknown liquid. From its appearance, this thing perfectly replicated Maid Cafe's style. In all honesty, it looked suspicious. Speaking of which, Zhang Heng had visited that coffee shop a couple of times before, but the bartender lady acted as if she did not know him, sticking to that cold, indifferent front. "Oh right, you've also mentioned last time that the wooden box made of wood that could isolate supernatural powers is sold here. How much is it?" Zhang Heng tasted the drink in his hand. It had a peculiar taste to it, a little like durian and a little like mango. There was probably soursop and avocado in there. It was as strange a mix as it could get. So Zhang Heng resolved to changing the subject, slowly and stealthily put the drink back down. From all the previous information he had gathered, there were two precious things in the game. The first one was a very realistic atmosphere and settings that allowed people to gain a lot of experience and skills in a short few hours. The second was the so-called game items. Needless to say, having a supernatural item that continued to have effects in the real world was very advantageous. The lucky rabbit's foot had been with Zhang Heng for more than a month now. He even found money on the road twice now, although only 2 yuan. The rabbit's foot was E-class, indicative that there were also other classes, A, B, C, and D, above it. But because the game items' effects were unidentifiable, carrying them around uninformed would be very dangerous. It was possible for him to have such good luck all the time, so he needed a better way to contain it. The last time, after the bartender told him about the tule tree, he went back and looked it up on Baidu and discovered that this tree only grew in Mexico's Oaxaca state, revered dearly by the locals. It was practically impossible to take a piece from the tree to make a box. That being the case, he had no other choice but to buy it from the bartender. It felt a bit like he was forced to do it even though he knew the outcome was bad. Chapter 31, Tokyo Drift Eye. Zhang Heng was preparing himself up to the sacrificial lamb, but the bartender answered nonchalantly, "Since you've had a taste of my masterpiece, I'll give you a tip. If you want to use the box to store the game items, I suggest that you forget about it." "Huh? Didn't I tell you the last time? Only game items can travel freely between the game and real world. To ensure fairness for everyone, you're forbidden to bring things from the game back to reality, nor can you bring anything from the real world into the game. So, the only thing the Thule box can do is to contain game items for you here in the real world. You'll have to figure out a way to do that yourself on the other side. The wooden Thule box is not a game item." The bartender shook her head. There are very few things that can be called a game item, even the lowest F-grade ones. But there are game items that function almost like the Thule box. That'll all depend on your luck. You can also wait till the year-end auction. There'll be a lot of goodies there. Of course, provided that your pockets are not empty. Well, for now, there was nothing Zhang Heng could do to get a suitable object to store game items. It was not an urgent matter, so he would have no choice but to heed the bartender's words, nodding to himself that most game items became effective upon direct contact. All he had to do was to be careful and perhaps put on a glove or something to minimize risk. If he stayed on, he might be coerced into tasting some other strange drinks, so Zhang Heng left the bar. He picked an empty booth and found a small alarm clock under the seat. Even though that extra 24 hours had prolonged his hardship on the island, he had to admit that the rewards were not insignificant either. His time he spent in the game was 12 times longer than other players, which gave him a better opportunity to explore the island. Considering the dire consequences that game over could bring, he would have to rely on this ability of his for the rest of it. He only hoped that it was not some remote and humanless place again this time. He set the time on the clock to 23:55 before leaning back onto the padded seat and rested his eyes. After about half an hour, a dizziness filled his head, and he felt weak. It was as if he'd been swallowed by a night hag, having none of the energy to even lift a finger. Then that familiar voice rang in his ear again. Verifying player's identity. Identity confirmed. Random extraction of newcomer's quest for player number 7958. Extraction complete. Current quest is Tokyo Drift. Tokyo, an international metropolis with a population of 37 million, deserving of its reputation as the center of Japan's politics, economy, and culture. During the day, this place is the Vanity Fair for financiers and politicians, but the grand opening of the truly entertaining stories only take place against the backdrop of the night. Will you, an exchange student from China, be able to leave your mark and become a legend here? Mission objective: win first place in an underground drifting championship. Mode single player. Time flow rate 360. 1 hour in the real world is equivalent to 15 days in this game. After 60 days, the player will be extracted and returned to the real world. A friendly reminder: the game will begin in 5 seconds. Players, please get ready. Zhang Heng opened his eyes and found himself standing right in the middle of a crossroad. Perhaps his prayers had been heard by someone. This place was the exact opposite or his first game on the desert island. He was surrounded by colorful neon lights and boards. A seemingly endless number of people strolled past him, speaking an unfamiliar language that he only heard on TV and games before. A phone rang somewhere blaring a tune alike Mika Nakashima's, "The Reason Why I Thought I'd Die." There were a few youths zipping through the crowd on skateboards. Hot young girls sported miniskirts, and middle-aged salarymen in suits clutched onto their briefcases as they hailed for cabs. Zhang Heng even spotted a large number of Western faces. It was night, yet it appeared to be livelier than during the day. Tisk. This was indeed the world's largest hotpot of urbanization. After Zhang Heng was sure of signs of danger in his surroundings, he checked his personal profile. Name: Zhang Heng. Gender: male. Age: 19. Player ID: 7958. Rounds played: 1. Current game points: 24. Skills: piano level 1. Language proficiency level 1, both languages at general communication skills level. Archery skills level 2. Wilderness survival skills level 2. Item in possession: Lucky Rabbit's Foot E. Assessment: the player has slightly better luck than the average person, but otherwise do not possess qualities that are worth commending. Has minimal wilderness survival and archery skills. Not expected to last longer than the first 5 rounds. Although Heng had been practicing rock climbing and photography for the past month, it appeared that neither of these skills even made it to level 0, which was why they were not displayed in the skills section. Other than that, the biggest change was the addition of an item in possession category and the rabbit foot's effects. His assessment was now slightly different too. At least he had gotten rid of that comment about him being unremarkable. Still, he might not be able to make it far enough. Once he had reviewed his current status, Zhang Heng took in his surroundings again. The place was thriving. Right opposite him was an emporium with a giant outdoor LED screen playing a SONY earbuds commercial. Bustling shops and bright neon signs crowded the entire skyline. It was quite crowded indeed. This place looked a lot like Shibuya. Zhang Heng had tagged along with his mum on a trip to Tokyo to attend an academic conference when he was much younger, but his memory of that time was little fuzzy now because the conference was lengthy, and he spent most of the time cooped up in hotel rooms. It was only on the last day that his mother had brought him out shopping in Shibuya. She got him a PSP before they left, which was why he had some sort of impression at all of this place. Getting to play the game in a thriving civilization was a good thing, but the situation was still slightly delicate. For the most part, Zhang Heng did not understand Japanese at all, even though there were Chinese characters in the words which allowed him to guess the approximate meaning on the signboards. At this rate, he would not be able to carry out his mission. How could they just leave him here? He played the role of an exchange student in the game. This meant that he would not have to worry about his accommodation at the very least. There was no mention, however, the name of his school. There were dozens of universities in Tokyo, national, public, and private. He could not possibly go around asking each one of them. In a time as such, Zhang Heng decided he might as well find out what he was carrying on his character. He began searching his pockets when a girl in a short skirt suddenly ran towards him, huffing and puffing, carrying 2 ice cream cones in her hands. "Zhang Heng, thank God you're here. I was scared to death. I thought I lost you on your first day here." The girl exhaled in relief when she saw him. The traffic light on the opposite lit up green. "Ah crap, we're running out of time. Let's go," the girl said, pulling his hand. Chapter 32, Tokyo Drift II. 10 minutes later, Zhang Heng was standing in front of the door into its Demo 1 with an ice cream cone that had magically appeared in his hand. "I'm sorry, Zhang-san 1. I had a sudden craving for ice cream while we were walking and left you wandering on the road on your road," the girl bowed apologetically. "No, it's my own fault. I was so busy looking around that I didn't follow you closely, fellow classmate Amiko." Zhang Heng had just finished searching all his pockets. Its contents were simple: a passport, student ID, wallet with 30,000 Japanese yen and a transportation card, keys, and cell phone. Among these things, Zhang Heng's priority was the phone. According to the girl, this was his first day here. Then, chances were that she could be a friendly schoolmate who had taken the time taking him around to admire Tokyo's night view. In most situations like these, both parties were most likely to have exchanged phone numbers. Zhang Heng checked a recent missed call and typed in Amiko's name. Of course, he could have asked the girl directly, making up an excuse that he did not know how to spell her name, but it seemed a little rude to him. When he looked up and saw the girl's expression, he knew that he had guessed correctly. Amiko looked adorable whenever she smiled, revealing her 2 snaggle teeth. "Zhang-san, Shibuya is a fashion center. There are a lot of very interesting stores and places of interest here, but occasionally hanky-panky business goes on around here, so you better stay close." Well, Zhang Heng had no objections to that. Amiko had been so warm-hearted by being his tour guide, introducing Tokyo as they walked the streets. Up until now, the both of them had been conversing in Mandarin, and she was pretty proficient. She majored in Chinese at the university and planned to apply as an exchange student to China next year, furthering her studies. But her understanding of China only came from what she saw on the TV and her teachers. So, in order to deepen her knowledge, she made it a point to be friends with this term's exchange student. Actually, my home is in Shinagawa. I've studied in Tokyo since high school. I've never been away from home before. Talking about going to a place far away makes me excited, yet a little worried at the same time." Amiko rubbed her nose shyly. "My parents back home was always worried if I could care for myself in the future, so I want to take this opportunity to train myself." Is that very childish of me?" "No, it's terrific." This time, the quest title was Tokyo Drift. From the name itself, Zhang Heng could tell that the primary purpose of this game was to test the player's driving skills, also confirmed by the mission target. Although it seemed like the rate of time flow was reduced when compared to the previous game, which only lasted for 2 hours, this mission was actually going to take twice as long to complete. 60 days to be precise. It might sound generous, but unless the player was already a competitive race driver or a hardcore car tuner, being good enough to win an underground street race, even the easiest one in a mere 60 days, was a practically impossible task. What more, the problems the players would face in this version of the game were not as simple as merely improving their driving skills. Right now, in Zhang Heng's wallet, there was only 30,000 yen. How should I put this into perspective? Well, take the ice cream Amico bought for example, which cost 300 yen each. From the flyer the ramen shop had given them when they passed by, Zhang Heng found out that a bowl of ramen cost between 800 to 1,200 yen. Of course, the food in the campus should be slightly more affordable, or if need be, he could consider cooking for himself. He might be able to last 60 days, but he was not really here to be an exchange student. In this period of time, he would need to get his hands on a car, find out the location of the race, figure a way to improve his driving skills, and sign up for a race. And to do all that, he would need to have the most basic of communication skills to support himself. If it were other players in his shoes, they might not have listened to Amiko explaining her personal growth journey and jump right into the main issue. But Zhang Heng was different. He had enough patience. Apart from his own great character, he also knew that everything happened for a reason. Human beings have continued to progress because they are consistently reflected on themselves and draw inferences. And this had always been Zhang Heng's strength. The first game had not only gave him 20 over points and a prop. Zhang Heng had analyzed his experience many times and came to a very important conclusion. Whoever the game creator was, it was evident that he always encouraged the players to explore the world they were put in. The lucky rabbit's foot was a good testament to that. The really good things did not appear in the main mission. If his only purpose was to survive, there was no need to travel to the center of the island at all. Yet, it was this side mission that had earned him the greatest reward. On top of that, the things that he did to improve his quality of life often earned him bonus points and rewards. Not to imply that the other player did not understand this, but having to think of a way to complete the mission under the pressure of the return deadline, none of them would be in the mood to enjoy the luscious views around them. However, Zhang Heng did not have any problems here because time was always on his side. For this game, he had a good 420 days, 7 times more than the average place. Other than that, he had also developed a personal interest in the various worlds the game presented. During his first round back on the island, everything felt very real to him. If it were not for the time bug that had caused a loop, there was no way of him finding a flaw. Compared to this megacity with a population of 37 million people, that was nothing. Everyone here seemed to have self-awareness and responded spontaneously to external stimuli. If all these were expressed through programming, it would take a frightening amount of calculations. In fact, no amount of coding could achieve this level of sophistication. This was not so much a game as a flawless work of art. Unfortunately, the players were just rushing sojourners in this world, no time to stop and admire. Zhang Heng might very well be the only exception. Amiko stuck out her tongue. Am I talking a little too much? I'm supposed to be introducing Tokyo, but then I somehow began talking about myself. You must be really bored. Why don't I buy you a taiyaki one to make up for it? I feel like you're just looking for an excuse to eat it. Hee hee. Amiko flashed her signature snaggle teeth after exposing her love for food. But let me pay this time. You've already treated me ice cream. I should thank you. If you hadn't volunteered to be my guide, I'm afraid I would not have left campus at all. Zhang Heng pulled out his wallet. He could not keep taking advantage of this girl's generosity. He bought 4 taiyaki from the stall by the road. A ubiquitous snack in Japan, it was an affordable preposition. Even though the name taiyaki literally meant baked sea bream, it was actually a cake with fillings like red beans. 4 of them only cost Zhang Heng 640 yen. Zhang-san, you really are a good person, Amiko mumbled as she bit into a steaming hot taiyaki. We're not too far from Yoyogi Park, but too bad it's already so late. Otherwise, I could bring you there for a walk. Chapter 33, Tokyo Drift III. Amiko had proven herself to be a very competent tour guide. This was especially true after eating Zhang Heng's taiyaki, turning her even more zealous. She showed Zhang Heng around before reluctantly sending him back to school around 9 at night. Then, she took the tram back to her apartment. Because land was so expensive in Tokyo, only a few universities had dormitories. Owing to that, most students had to rent rooms outside of campus like Amiko. Although her home was within the city, she chose to rent an apartment unit with other university students because it was nearer to campus. However, the school treated exchange students pretty well. They had an international house, which provided accommodation for students from abroad. What more, they were all single rooms. Zhang Heng found his room number on his phone and unlocked the door with the key he was carrying in one of his pockets. The room was mediocre in size, only about 15 square meters. It was, however, furnished with a bed, wardrobe, study table, air conditioner, and even a full-sized bathroom. Zhang Heng took a quick shower before finding some clean clothes in the closet to change into. There was a half packet of biscuits on the table, a bank card, a notebook, and a bunch of photocopied papers. It all made him look like a real exchange student who had just moved in that day. He picked up the notebook and found a list of his expenditures. The handwriting was a one-to-one copy of his. On the second page, a timetable with only one subject was scribbled down, which was Japanese. Under normal circumstances, universities would never arrange pure lingual classes for exchange students. Generally, when enrolling exchange students, the university would specify Japanese as a requirement the students must meet. Of course, some did not, but only because most majors were taught English. That must have been the hidden benefit that this game version gave its players, a sort of tutorial for those who spoke nor read Japanese. But it was not possible to fluently learn a language in 60 days. For the time being, he would still have to rely on Amiko, the trusty human translating machine, to communicate with others. He was musing on that thought when he received a text message from her. Zhang-san, I've reached home safely. Damn it. Momo went to drink from the toilet again while I was out. She left paw prints everywhere. Amiko had told Zhang Heng about Momo, a Japanese patty cat she adopted, to which Zhang Heng replied, "Cook it in a stew." Amiko sent him a shocked face. Zhang Heng typed back, "I'm just joking. Oh, by the way, Amka, do you know where the nearest ATM to school is?" He flipped to the third page in his notebook. There was a list of things to do, one of which was signing up for a bank card. The fee for the months to come would be deducted from the card. "Of course, I'll bring you there tomorrow. If there's anything else that you don't know, you can always ask me. I'm very familiar with the area." Amiko was still as earnest as the first time they met. "Thank you for letting me trouble you." Zhang Heng bid the girl good night. He then went online to look up some information. Soon after, he flipped the lights off and climbed into bed. And that was how he spent his first night in a foreign country. The night passed without incident. The very next morning, Zhang Heng attended the language class. At an entry level, the learning was relatively simple, to master the Gaojian or 50 sounds chart, which mainly tests the student's memory. Then, in the afternoon, he and Amiko proceeded to apply for a bank card. The process would take about a week. Once they stepped out of the bank, Zhang Heng asked his companion, "If I want to find work, is there a place you would recommend?" The 30,000 yen he had was far from enough. The 2-month estimate he made previously was simply too optimistic. Rental for the room alone was already 20,000 yen. Luckily, the first month's rent had already been paid for. Realizing that he was going to spend another 14 months or so here, Zhang Heng decided that he had to find a way to earn some money. He did not know how the other players were going to resolve this financial problem. They would probably opt for some high-risk solutions, but Zhang Heng preferred to opt for working. While the money may not come as quickly, it would allow him to familiarize and affiliate himself with this city. Most people work in restaurants, supermarkets, or convenience stores, but being able to speak Japanese is a requirement. Amiko paused for a moment to think. "Or do you have any skills?" "Skills?" Zhang Heng cocked his brow. "Does archery and playing the piano count?" Ah, archery and piano, that's incredible. If that's the case, you can work at the Kyudo practice hall or Western restaurants. But Japanese archery, Kyudo, is slightly different from Western archery, emphasizing on the cultivation of the spirit and the mind. Also, there's no way you could avoid talking to people in the practice hall. It looks like your best option is to play at a Western restaurant. Amiko carefully broke down the pros and cons of each option for Zhang Heng. This girl was through and through an executive. She immediately dragged Zhang Heng to an Italian restaurant to apply for a job. Unfortunately, they already had a pianist. Next, the pair tried the Spanish and French restaurants next door. Eventually, a Western restaurant owned by a local Tokyo-lite was willing to give Zhang Heng a chance after hearing him play. Even so, the owner was still bothered by the fact that Zhang Heng did not know how to speak Japanese. Amiko pointed at the job outside the shop and said, "You're still short on servers, right? I used to work in roast beef ono. How about this? I'll work here too. If there are any language problems, I can help him translate." "Then we don't have a problem anymore," the restaurateur nodded. "We pay 1,200 yen an hour, 3 days a week, 5 hours a day. There will be day and night shifts. You can choose to come on the days you don't have classes. I will try to put you two in the same shift." "Thank you for your trouble," Amiko bowed. Only when they stepped out of the door did Zhang Heng find out what the two had been talking about. When Amiko sensed a protest on the way, she quickly explained, "The trip yesterday night was really fun. Everyone is normally so busy with their own lives that very few people would be willing to listen to what other people's opinions. Zhang-san is a very gentle person. Also, it's not all because of you. I just quit my last job and have been looking for one. The environment and pay here are pretty good as well. Also, isn't it much safer with you around?" Amiko flashed her snaggle teeth. Could this be the perks of a good first impression? Zhang Heng said nothing. When he saw that it was already evening, he treated Amiko to dinner at a restaurant nearby. The two were chatting about school when a spray-painted Subaru BRZ and a green Volkswagen Golf R pulled up in front of the shop. Young boys and girls with colorful hair stepped out of the cars. One of them, a guy with a bandana, shouted at the owner to bring beers the minute he stepped in. From the looks of most of them, it was apparent they had a round of drinks before this. They were already somewhat drunk. Amiko whispered, "Don't keep staring at them. That guy is a recent Basazoku one. Quite a few of them are from our school. They hang out with good-for-nothing worthless punks all day long. They do nothing good from morning to night." Chapter 34, Tokyo Drift IV. Zhang Heng did not avert his gaze immediately. He was thinking of a way into the primary mission when voila, the queue was right in front of his eyes. This group of so-called Basazoku were markedly cartooning enthusiasts. If he could somehow be involved in their circle, he should be able to be acquainted with all sorts of underground street races. Building a good relationship with one or two people, he might just get the person to teach him some racing skills. But there was one problem. He could sense Amiko's discrimination of these people. Without her to help him translate, he had no way of communicating with them. Should he try convince Amiko to help, or should he just drag her in? Zhang Heng did not have a lot of time to dilly-dally. The moment the headbanded guy glanced over, he lowered his head and avoided eye contact. The other customers pretty much reacted the same. The group of Basazoku appeared to have a sense of superiority over the average person, whistling and laughing loudly as they sauntered to an unoccupied table at the back. At the last minute, Zhang Heng decided to go against breaking friendship with Amiko, purely because this bunch of people was too dim-witted. If he were going to associate himself with them, he would have to lower his intelligence to match theirs. Zhang Heng did not have any masochistic tendencies and decided to abandon that decision instead. He knew that this wasn't the only way to get involved in street racing, not to mention learning nothing at all from this bunch of goons. For the next 2 weeks, Zhang Heng spent his time learning Japanese and working at the Western restaurant. There were no developments on the racing front, but his relationship with Amiko was getting better. The pair worked together, with Zhang Heng helping correct Amiko's Mandarin pronunciation, and in return, Amiko tutored his Japanese. On top of that, Zhang Heng started to realize Amiko's growing fondness of exchanging text messages with him. After getting to know her more, he realized that Amiko was the kind of girl who could really talk. From Momo the cat, the stray dog on the road, to the supermarket bento discounts, everything she saw, she would send him a text telling him about them. During his Japanese class, he would receive Imko's text. "Ah, today, the Chinese language teacher is wearing an extremely adorable floral skirt that does not suit her age at all. Everyone is shocked." While he was having his meal, he would get, "Big news, this is a disaster. Did you know that the school's dog Matsuko is actually male?" Or before going to bed, "Zhang-san, don't you think that the world would be a horrible place if cats don't exist?" The one that he received nearly every day. "Oh no, am I too keen on sending messages? Do you hate me? Yes, no." Zhang Heng put down the rollerball pen he was using and rubbed his eyes. "No, I was revising today's lesson." He had not been loafing about even though he was unable to find out about the covert night street race. It felt like he had gone back in time to his senior year in high school. For the sake of picking up Japanese as soon as possible, or at least be able to understand the dullest everyday conversation, he went all out, paring down his sleeping time to just 5 hours to tirelessly practice his language skills. He even kept a book of Japanese basics next to the piano in the restaurant. The whole thing, undoubtedly, was like attending extracurricular classes instead of playing a game. "Zhang-san, you're too industrious. Compared to you, I feel like I'm wasting time," Amiko said admiringly. "I'm just doing what I have to." Zhang Heng smiled bitterly. Truth be told, he was not very interested in learning languages. But on the second evening here, he received a prompt from that mysterious voice again. It confirmed that his return time had been extended to 420 days. Some things could be planned in advance, though. He could not possibly rely on Amiko to be his translator for such a long period. Moreover, she had already applied to be an exchange student in China and may not be around for the next school year. Zhang Heng decided that he needed to be independent. A 14-month-long study tour like this was hard to come by. If he did take advantage of it and pick up the local language, it would be a waste of opportunity. Zhang Heng had a sneaking suspicion that if this game continued, he would have to learn all mainstream languages of the world first. Amiko still kept up with her prattling messages about trivial things, and after 1 week of bombardment, Zhang Heng could read between the lines of her message today that she was in low spirits. So he typed, "What happened to you?" But before he clicked send, he erased the message and then dialed her number. "Amiko, have you been in some sort of trouble recently?" The girl was shocked to hear from him. Her voice was a little hoarse as if she had just cried not a while ago and she was sniffling. "Zhang-san, I'm sorry for worrying you. It's nothing actually. It's just a family affair. No, not really a family affair. That person left us 6 years ago. You'll feel better if you talk about it. If you want to, you can tell me. I can keep it a secret for you. After all, other than you, no one else here understands what I say." The upset Amiko chuckled and then proceeded to tell her story to Zhang Heng. It turned out when she was younger, her father became addicted to betting on horse racing. He lost the entire family's fortune. When her mum could not stand it anymore, they got divorced. After they had broken all relations, her mother married her stepfather and had Amiko's younger brother. Their lives had been very harmonious until she started university. Somehow her father found her and reached out. The first time they met, he asked her to lend him money. At first he said that it was because his business was trouble and needed some turnover money, but if there was one time, there would be a second. After a few more, Amiko grew suspicious. She found out that not only was he still gambling, he also picked up a terrible drinking habit. The father and daughter broke into a fight and stopped contacting each other for a few months. Then during the afternoon an hour ago, Amiko received a call from her father saying that he had been beaten up by debt collectors and did not have any money to see a doctor. Having learned her lesson, though, Amiko did not send her hard-earned money right away. Her father called her ungrateful and even said that he did not have a daughter like her. Amiko broke into tears and asked Zhang Heng, who was on the other line, "Zhang-san, Am I very cold-blooded? I think your father is extremely unreasonable. From the looks of it, he's most likely lying. But if you're worried about him, I can go with you tomorrow. Really? Isn't it unbecoming of me to trouble you for my family's problem? Amiko felt abashed. No, recently, I feel like I'm nearing my limits as well. If I'm not learning Japanese, I would be playing piano at the restaurant. It just so happens I need a breather. Zhang Heng blurted all these from the heart. If he had to look at another one of those kana one syllables again, he might just throw up. It's Saturday tomorrow. Let's go after work then. Okay. Thank you so much, Zhang-san. Don't worry about it. Amiko's problem was just a brief interlude. Zhang Heng did not mind it at all. After he hung up, he began thinking about how to improve his driving skills again. It was already 15 days into the second game and had still not started on the main mission yet. If another player were in his shoes, they would be panicking already. But because he had 14 months, Zhang Heng was not in too much of a hurry. But he could not continue to squander time away so rampantly. It would be better for him to set a deadline for himself. If he were still unable to find a way to improve his driving skills, Zhang Heng would have no choice but to try getting involved with this Basazoku. Chapter 35, Tokyo Drift V. After getting off the bus, they took a 15-minute walk, and after crossing an intersection, they finally arrived at the destination. Zhang Heng looked at the small shop called Kurihara Seafood and asked, "Your father lives here?" "Yeah, it doesn't smell so good inside, so you can wait for me outside." The closer they were, the more perturbed Amiko looked, but she was ever so considerate. "Since I'm already here, I might as well go in with you." Zhang Heng, on the other hand, was not reluctant. The both of them passed roll-up banner stands and an abandoned old freezer as they walked into the seafood supply shop. A pungent, fishy stench immediately assaulted their noses as they took in the overpowering smell of fishes and prawns, all sorts of seafood, everywhere. But there was no one in the shop all but a moray eel struggling inside a polystyrene box. "Father, father," Amiko called out, but no one replied. Could he really have gone to the hospital? The girl muttered and hesitantly walked up the stairs with Zhang Heng following closely behind. The wooden stairs had not been mended for a long time, leaving cracks and chips everywhere. Every time they took a step, the stairs would groan and creak under pressure, threatening to give up the load they could barely bear. If Zhang Heng thought the ground floor was packed like sardines, there was barely any space to walk on the first floor. There was dirty laundry, beer bottles, and even porn magazines scattered all over the place. An unshaven, half-naked man was lying on the ground, snoring away. "I'm such an idiot. I believe the same lies over and over again." Amiko held her forehead in her palm. "In some way, this is also good news, right? It's better than lying on a hospital bed." "This is even worse, so much worse. Why do men who lie to their own daughters exist in this world?" Amiko pulled the man by both hands and tried to get him onto the tatami on the side. When he saw that Amiko seemed to be struggling, Zhang Heng offered to help. "Come, let me help." As they were dragging the man, something fell out of his pocket. Amiko picked it up to examine it. It was a brown wallet. She was stunned and appeared to be lost in thought when the man suddenly sat upright on the tatami. He lunged for Amiko, shouting at her furiously. In an emergency, Zhang Heng instinctively employed the defensive move that Bell had taught him and threw the man onto the floor with an over-shoulder throw. The man fell to the ground with a loud, hard thud. His eyes rolled to the back of his head as he slumped to the ground, unconscious. Only then did Amiko react and shouted, "No, is he dead?" The girl jumped backward in shock. No, but it will be a while before he wakes up. What is he screaming at you about?" "Give me back my wallet," Amiko mumbled. "I will go back and continue learning Japanese," Zhang Heng answered sheepishly. After that, the both of them carried the drunk and unconscious man back onto the tatami. Zhang Heng saw that Amiko was still holding onto the worn wallet and asked, "Why? Is there a lot of money inside?" Amiko shook her head. "No, this wallet was a birthday gift from my mum 12 years ago. I can't believe he's still carrying it." She opened the wallet and found an old, yellowed picture through the semi-transparent film on the right flap. It was a family picture. Amiko pointed at the 1-year-old baby and said, "This is probably me, and that's my mum and dad at the back." Mum said that wasn't a gambler back then. We were all very happy. Zhang Heng's gaze fell on the very eye-catching Nissan behind the man. "You never told me that your father was into car tuning." "Car tuning? No, how is that possible? Don't see him for what he is right now. He was a great role model when I was younger. When the seafood supply shop first opened, business was not very good. It couldn't compete with the local competition. To increase the shop's income, he began learning English, scouted for overseas clients, calling them one by one, and sometimes even showing up at their doorstep. At the store's peak, he even sold seafood to London, Los Angeles, and even Peru. Such a serious man wouldn't have ever been involved with the Basazoku, and since I can remember, he has never driven a car. The goods have always been delivered by hired hands." Amiko recalled and then took another look at the picture. This car must have belonged to someone else. They probably parked it there when the picture was taken. "Oh, is that so?" Zhang Heng did not ask any more questions but said, "I'm quite interested in cars. This car is probably a relic now, huh? Can I take a picture of that?" "Sure, but keep me out of the picture. I was an ugly child." Amiko blocked out her 1-year-old face with a finger as Zhang Heng took a picture. After that, she rinsed 2 teacups and boiled some water with the electric kettle on the table. She rummaged through a cupboard and found a packet of black tea leaves. Amiko brought it up to her nose and sniffed. "This is probably oolong tea." The pair chatted as they enjoyed the tea, but the conversation was mostly Amka talking about her childhood. After about half an hour, the stubbled man on the tatami opened his eyes and rubbed his throbbing shoulders. When he saw Zhang Heng, his eyes widened with caution. Amiko quickly explained their relationship. Only then did the stubbled man relax a little. The animosity quickly turned into disregard, and then father and daughter spoke in native Japanese. Finally, Amiko took out 15,000 yen from her bag and placed them on the table, but the man did not look very happy. His speech became even more impassioned, and he got up from the mat angrily. Zhang Heng stood protectively in front of Amiko, his forehead creased. The results of his workout had been pretty evident lately. Although he was not super muscular, there was not an ounce of extra flesh hanging from his body. On top of that, after that shoulder throw Zhang Heng had given the man's manner softened a little at the sight of him. Amiko pushed herself off the floor, looking crestfallen and the rims of her eyes red and raw. "Let's go." All the way back on the tram, Amiko only stared out the window. Zhang Heng was careful not to interrupt her. After a while, he took out a packet of mixed-flavored gum and said in broken Japanese, "Don't eat. I'll eat strawberries." "It's if you don't eat one, I'll eat all of the strawberry-flavored ones," Amiko corrected as she picked one. The crease in her brows slowly disappeared and she switched to Mandarin. "I'm sorry, Zhang-san, that you had to see all those unhappy things." "Not at all. You have always been helping me. Letting me help you once in a while makes me feel pretty good. So, what happened? Did the two of you end up in good terms?" "No, my dad's employee is returning to his hometown this month. He couldn't find anyone suitable to help him deliver the goods. The store is not going to survive for much longer. He always finds all kinds of excuses anyway. I couldn't be bothered to differentiate the truth from lies, so I gave him all my allowance for his month. That should be enough to keep things peaceful for now," Amiko said helplessly. Chapter 36, Tokyo Drift VI. Every time the girl sent him back to his place, Zhang Heng would feel very self-conscious. He had navigation on his phone and could actually find his way again, but Amiko always insisted on sending him regardless. To thank her, Zhang Heng bought her dinner in the canteen. Ever since he started working at the restaurant, he was able to work out his pressing financial problem. Now, his monthly income was around 70,000 yen. This sum of money was enough to sustain him in the city, but that was just about it. Using this method to save up for a car was just too unrealistic. Presently, Zhang Heng still had not found a solution to this setback, but he had at least found a prospect in regards to brushing up his driving skills. On their way back, Zhang Heng asked Amiko for his father's name. He keyed in Kurihara Tetsuya 1 on his phone along, and the search results that came up were all related to Kurihara seafood. Everything appeared as healthy as it could be. After that, he used the editing tool to crop the man's face from the picture, magnify it, then upload it to FaceSearch, an image search engine created by Google Application Programming Interface, API, that allowed its users to track down similar pictures on the web. The search results varied in accuracy and could sometimes be very inconsistent. You could upload by base picture and get Wang Liuoden, and a search for Takeshi Kenshiro would get you Zhao Benchen. Looking at the masses of pictures that popped up on his screen, Zhang Heng knew that he was going to have a lot of work to do tonight. The second morning, Zhang Heng slept in, which was something he rarely did. Since he did not need to work or attend classes that afternoon, he lay in bed until 10 a.m. before rolling out of bed, not forgetting to make up for his morning run. After brunch, Zhang Heng checked his phone and saw that he had 2 messages from Amiko. One was, "Thank you so much for yesterday." And the other, "Momo drank too much toilet water and is having diarrhea. I'm taking him to the vet." Zhang Heng employed his recently upgraded Japanese and typed, "Be careful." After that, he set Kurihara Seafood as his destination on his phone. This was the first time he traveled so far without Amiko accompanying him. Fortunately, he had a map at hand and recollection for the place. After an hour and a half, he finally made it to the place they had been to yesterday. This time, the stubbled man was awake but still looked like he had just got out of bed. Garbed in pair of boxers, slippers, and a sleeping robe, he examined a batch of scallops in front of the store. He was startled when he turned around and saw Zhang Heng, then rambled on and on about something unintelligible as he kept retreating into the store, his hands searching his surroundings for any defensive weapons. When he saw that Zhang Heng had no intention of withdrawing, he fished out his phone and indicated that he was going to call 110. "Uncle, I heard from Amiko that you understand English," asked Zhang Heng in English. "So what?" The stubbled man found a mop and held on like his life depended on it. "Hey, kid, I'm warning you. Even if you're Amiko's boyfriend, you have no right to get involved in our family's business. If you don't leave, I'll call the police." "I'm not here about yesterday." Zhang Heng shook his head. "Can we please talk inside?" Don't move. Don't think that you can use this trick to get near me. The same move won't even work on Saint Seiya," the stubbled man barked, raising his voice. It seemed that yesterday's shoulder throw had somewhat scarred him. They spoke in English anyway, so Zhang Heng did not have to worry about any eavesdroppers. Zhang Heng did not push it any further and simply said, "Then I'll just say it. I was hoping you could teach me how to race cars." The man was stumped for a short minute. "You want a seafood supply store owner to teach you how to drag race? Is your English bad or is there a problem with my hearing? What is this? Some cold Easter Sunday joke?" The man paused for a moment and then continued, "Didn't Amiko tell you? I don't know how to drive at all. Why do you think I have so much backlog ever since my delivery man quit?" He gestured towards the pile of boxes miserably. Zhang Heng did not budge. "Isn't your English too good to be a self-taught learner? Take the Tetsuya, or should I call you Tsuchiya, the famous racing prodigy who left for Europe immediately after graduating from high school. Your excellent driving skills attracted the attention of sponsors, which led to your participation in the FIA GT Grand Prix. Your biggest success was winning second runner-up in New York, but because you offended the racing team manager, you were forced to return home. 17 years ago, you won the Tokyo D1 Grand Prix, then in the same year, set out to challenge the Drift King DK title. You beat all the street racers from 22 wards out of Tokyo's 23 special wards, but you suddenly gave up and vanished at the final juncture," Zhang Heng said unhurriedly. "I don't know who the hell you're talking about," the man said, keeping a straight face. "Kid, if you want to go race cars, don't stand in front of my shop and disturb my business." No matter how hard he pretended to remain calm and unaffected, Zhang Heng, who had been staring at his face, noticed that when he mentioned the name Tsuchiya, The man's pupils contracted. Zhang Heng was 90% sure that he had found the guy. Why did you quit, and why change your name to Take the Tetsuya? Is it because you don't want to be found? The stubbled man's poker face finally thawed. Kid, are you threatening me? Are you finally admitting to it, Mr. Yasuk? I'm not admitting to anything, the man answered cautiously. Zhang Heng did not continue to twist the man's arm since he only wanted to confirm his identity. This guy reeked of deceit, but lucky for him, Zhang Heng was not going to threaten to expose the man for Amiko's sake. But the man never explicitly denied Zhang Heng's accusation either. Aren't you short on a delivery man? What about me? I'll help you deliver goods. I don't need to be paid, you just have to teach me how to race. The man's eyes lit up at the mention of not having to pay, but began quickly weighing the advantages and disadvantages. It mostly revolved around the consequences of refusing the young man's offer. After a moment, he looked at the Chinese boy, and Zhang Heng could tell that the man was tempted. But the profiteer in him saw Take the Tetsuya asked, "How about I teach you to race cars, and other than helping me deliver goods, you pay me a fee as well?" When he saw the expression on Zhang Heng's face, he quickly changed his tone. "That was a bit too flagrant of me. All right, forget about the fee, but let me get this straight, we need to set some rules. First, don't ever mention the name Yasuk Tsuchiya ever again. There is no such person. Second, you and I are not master and apprentice. I am your boss and you are my delivery guy. I'm just worried that you might be too slow in delivering and slow down business, so I'm just giving you a few pointers. How much you can learn will depend on you. Third, Amiko cannot know about this. Add one more to it. Don't ask Amiko for money ever again," Zhang Heng added. The stubbled man thought about it and then agreed reluctantly. Fine. Chapter 37, Tokyo Drift VII. Your job is simple. Get here by 1 every morning, drive me to the Tsukuji fish market, wait for me while I purchase the stocks, and then you'll bring me back here. After I've sorted the goods, you'll deliver them to the places they need to go. That's all the work for the day. Understand, kid? 1 in the morning. Then do I still have time to sleep after all that? Zhang Heng asked, his brows furrowed. Take the Tetsuya grinned, revealing a mouthful of yellow teeth. That will depend on how fast you deliver the goods. All right, do you have any other questions? I have one last question. Hello? You will help me get a driver's license first, right? Take the Tetsuya's face froze. Repeat what you just said. I don't have a driver's license. If I'm going to deliver goods for you, I will need to get a license first, right? Zhang Heng answered honestly. You don't even have a driver's license, and you want me to teach you how to race. Take the Tetsuya looked defeated. Are you messing with me? Why would someone who hasn't touched a steering wheel in his life be interested in underground drift racing? Actually, I'm not interested in drift racing at all, but because of reasons I'm disinclined to share, I have to join the race. Take the Tetsuya glared at Zhang Heng, only speaking after a minute through his teeth. Then, you will have to pray that you can drive faster than the cops. What? Tokyo at midnight and Tokyo in the morning were like chalk and cheese. In the dead of night at midnight, most people were already asleep at home. Only residential buildings by the streets would occasionally still have a light on. Zhang Heng left the campus and took the last train. It was almost empty except for a few exhausted salarymen and a couple of geisha with heavily painted faces. He disembarked at the last station, walked a very long way before finally arriving at the seafood supply store at the agreed time. Take the Tetsuya had somehow pulled himself together. Instead of snoring away upstairs, he was squatting in the store, sorting the order forms. When he heard the footsteps behind him, he did not even bother to look up. Give me 5 more minutes. After exactly 5 minutes, he got up and picked up 2 freshly dead crabs and tied them up with a straw rope. He tossed a set of keys to Zhang Heng and then snorted, "Come with me." Zhang Heng followed the man to a small open-air car park nearby. Take the Tetsuya gave the metal gate a shake, and after a while the lights were turned on. Then, a hunched elderly man slipped on a shirt as he came and unlocked the gate. Take the Tetsuya smiled at the old man, telling him something in Japanese as he handed the crabs over while pointing at Zhang Heng. The elderly man looked delighted receiving the crabs, his smile stretching out the wrinkles on his face. He glanced at Zhang Heng and gave the young man a friendly nod. Mr. Crab, to be honest, I don't know what his real name is. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares about these kinds of things anyway. His old partner passed away a long time ago, and after his children went overseas, they never contacted him anymore. He makes a living for himself with this car park, and this is also where he lives. We're old friends. I give him dead crabs that can't be sold, and he lets me park here for free. Also, I've already introduced you to him. From now onward, you can just come here to pick up and return the car. Which one is it? Zhang Heng looked around at the car park, and finally, his gaze settled on a mustard-yellow van parked in the corner. Isn't it beautiful? Mitsubishi's second-generation L300 Delica, launched in 1982. It's the first four-wheel-drive van in Japan. When talking about cars, it was like Take the Tetsuya had become a whole different person. That dejected uncle seemed to have vanished. He lit a cigarette and ran his hand along the body of the car. It runs a 4D56 diesel 2.5 engine and the same chassis as the Pajero, powerful enough to cope with bad weather and terrible road conditions. This van has the performance of an off-road vehicle. 1982, are you sure it still runs? Zhang Heng asked uncertainly. Don't worry, I found it in a scrapyard and I've refurbished the interior. This four-wheel drive is now a two-wheel drive. In terms of stability, it's much better than before. Four-wheel drive adds to the weight of the car, but a car that is too heavy is not very good for the driver. It uses too much petrol. Most importantly, I fixed the cassette player. Take the Tetsuya opened the co-driver's seat, climbed into the car, and picked a cassette tape. Zhang Heng climbed into the driver's seat. After getting home yesterday morning, he quickly looked up on some driving knowledge, especially videos and pictures on the web. On top of that, he even downloaded a driving simulation game on his phone and played it on the subway on his way to the store, which was why right now, he still had zero confidence. Zhang Heng pushed the key that Take the Tetsuya had given to him into the ignition. It took him 3 tries to get the car going. Take the Tetsuya completely ignored him. He waited until the vehicle roared to life and then slipped the change and asked a cassette into the player on the dashboard. But before the car could even move 5 meters, the car suddenly jerked and came to a stop. Take the Tetsuya lurched forward hard, hitting his head on the glove compartment in front of the passenger seat. Zhang Heng said flatly, "Sorry, wrong gear." As he spoke, he shifted to 5th gear. "Please inform me when you sign up for a race. I will buy insurance for you. I will be the benefactor, of course. You win." Take the Tetsuya stopped the tape player. "Start with the 1st gear. Press the clutch with your left foot. Push it down all the way. Then slowly with your right feet, step on the gas pedal as you depress the clutch." After about 3 minutes, the L300 finally wobbled out of the parking lot, and under Mr. Crab's supervision, it slowly bumped into a fire hydrant. Luckily, it was very early in the morning, and the road was still quite deserted. Zhang Heng drove the van onto the open road, lurching every now and then. When he looked over at his passenger, he saw that Take the Tetsuya had fastened the seat belt like an honest man. The 15-minute journey took Zhang Heng 25 minutes. On the way, the engine stalled 5 more times, and he ran 2 red lights. He even drove over the curbs. Fortunately, though, they arrived at their destination in one piece. Tsukiji Fish Market was the biggest seafood market, not only in Tokyo but in the world. Fishermen from all over Japan would deliver all the produce they caught to be sold here. In its heyday, they could sell 3,200 tons of seafood a day worth 3 billion yen. Every single day, over 60,000 wholesalers would come to select and bid for the products they want. To them, this was not just a marketplace, it was a battlefield. Zhang Heng pulled the handbrake. Take the Tetsuya was about to say something, but he blanked out. Finally, all he said was, "Wait here." Then he jumped out of the van and greeted someone he appeared to know. The man produced a packet of cigarettes and the pair walked into the market, puffing away. By the time Take the Tetsuya returned, it had already been an hour. Following him was a forklift carrying the boxes of seafood he had selected. To the man's surprise, instead of taking a nap while waiting for him to return, Zhang Heng was practicing his driving skills. Compared to his jerky driving this morning, his skills had now improved noticeably. Take to Tetsuya, however, did not comment but instead grumbled grumpily, "Get down and load the van." Chapter 38, Tokyo Drift VII. Zhang Heng realized that he underestimated the extent of Take to Tetsuya, his new boss, ruthlessness. He sent the man back to the shop at 3:15 in the morning. Then, after spending 10 minutes unloading and packing the seafood, Zhang Heng left the shop at 3:35. By 6:3, he was still driving with about half of the undelivered goods at the back of the van. By then, the street was growing busy. All the office workers who lived far from their workplaces were already out the door, spilling into the underground subway and bus stations. The number of cars on the road were also gradually increasing. Zhang Heng went to 2 other places, and when he left an izakaya one, he encountered 2 traffic policemen who were just starting their shifts. As a result, he decided not to risk continuing the delivery. Driving without a license in Japan would be a severe offense. Not only would the offending driver have to serve less than 3 years of jail time and pay a 500,000 yen fine, all passengers and owners of the vehicle would also be convicted and fined. It was almost at peak hours. If Zhang Heng did not leave, chances were he would be stuck in a jam. Zhang Heng brought the L300 back to the store to an unsurprised Take to Tetsuya. The latter picked up the phone and contacted the former delivery man before turning to Zhang Heng and said, "You have 1 more week. After that, Takahashi Koichi will be back in his hometown. If you still can't complete the delivery by then and I suffer a loss, would you pay me back?" "All right," Zhang Heng answered. Zhang Heng's unwavering answer was not quite what Take to Takashi had expected. This situation was, in all honesty, quite a tragedy for the store owner. Not only was he unable to contend with the young man, but he was also in a vulnerable position that the young man could capitalize on. He could do nothing about Zhang Heng not completing the job, so he could only grumble and make a fuss. He really hadn't expected the young man to actually agree so breezily. Take the Takashi said cunningly, "Hey, kid, you better don't lie. If you can't do it, then you can't. The sooner you tell me, the sooner I can figure out a way to hire another driver. I worked hard to get each and every one of these customers. Don't make empty promises. If you still cannot complete your task, the one at stake is my shop. If I fail to complete the deliveries, I will pay you back whatever you lose." Zhang Heng hopped down the van and stretched his shoulders and wrists. His first delivery was unsuccessful, and after driving from the wee hours of the morning, his body and mind were exhausted. But he found that somehow, this pressure had drastically improved his driving. It would appear that this non-stop driving around was much more useful than if he were to practice the entire day. Of course, he could always tell Take to Takashi to reduce his cargo, but if he was not even willing to accept a small challenge like this, then why bother to participate in the competition? He might as well just give up then. Zhang Heng took the bus back to campus, and was only able to wash his face and quickly gobble down a few pieces of bread before he had to rush for another Japanese lesson. Only in the evening did he get the chance to make up for being awake the whole morning. He had set the alarm for 4 hours. Later, he had dinner. He then visited the bookstore nearby to buy a map of Tokyo. As mentioned previously, self-reflection and deduction were Zhang Heng's strengths. On his way back to campus that morning, he had already started mulling over reasons he was unable to complete his task that day. Other than his unpolished driving skills and the L300's poor performance, his unfamiliarity with the roads and lack of route planning were also crucial factors. No matter how good a driver was, it would be challenging for him to be able to perform to be at fullest capacity if he was unfamiliar with the location of the competition. At 1:02 in the morning, Zhang Heng arrived at the parking lot, gave Mr. Crab 2 onigiri 1, who gleefully opened the gate for him. He returned to the store at 7:34 a.m. Unfortunately, his performance today was worse than the day before, delivering only about 40% of the goods. Take the Takashi was cleaning the sink in his pajamas when he saw the young man return. "Young people should not be too confident. It's not too late for you to give up now. Otherwise, in 6 days, you will have to sell yourself to me as a slave and work for free your whole life." Zhang Heng said nothing in reply. He had only himself to blame, taking too much time planning the route and unfamiliarity with the names of the places causing him to arrive at the wrong location a couple of times. He even nearly drove all the way to Okinawa to see bikinis. Zhang Heng added another item to his to-do list: get familiar with Tokyo streets. Takashi seafood products. Customers could be divided into two main types: regular customers and new customers. The former received their goods at the same locations while the latter was more spontaneous, which, at the moment, Zhang Heng could do nothing about. For the regular clientele, on the other hand, Zhang Heng could mark their location on the map, then use a pen to connect the dots and find the best route for delivery. After that, he simply had to slot in the new customers' locations that were en route. That way, he could save a large portion of his time. So on the third day, Zhang Heng delivered 70% of the goods, and for the first time, when the L300 pulled up in front of the shop, Take-the Takashi did not make fun of him. On the fourth day, only 20% of the goods did not make it to the clients. On the fifth day, however, Zhang Heng found himself at a bottleneck. Although he had done his best to make every minute count, he still had 15% of undelivered goods. It was only thanks to the careful planning that he was able to send them to nearby clients. The remaining ones were located further from town or in more secluded areas, completely overlooking them. If he were to deliver them now, it would take him an exhaustingly long time to reach. While his driving skills still had room for improvement, he only had 2 more days before the deadline. Not delivering all of the remaining goods was out of the question. Once again, Zhang Heng found himself deep in thought. Take-the Takashi, who had his head buried in an adult magazine, looked up suddenly. To a racer, his car is more important than his wife. So how could a person who doesn't even understand his own wife manage the relationship? Tusk. Young people nowadays are so foolhardy. Do you have the blueprint of the car? Zhang Heng asked the man poring over an ocean of cigarette butts. A great race car driver simply needs to listen to be able to tell the horsepower of an engine, but I can't be so harsh to a rookie like yourself, right? Take-the Takashi answered in a patronizing tone. It was like this guy had to accomplish something, however small, or he would die. I have the drawing of the modification on my computer. Take a look at it yourself. Don't compete against it. Get to know its temper, then you'll be able to control it well. Zhang Heng turned on the computer and was immediately greeted by Take-the Takashi's hidden files. Among the mountain of porn, Zhang Heng found what he wanted. To his surprise, there was not only the blueprint for the L300 but also blueprints for other cars as well. They were all earlier models, though. It seemed like they had all been modified by a certain Mr. Take-the Takashi. On top of that, there was also a copy of a manual. Take-the Takashi called out from downstairs. Focus on studying the L300. Ignore everything else. You're not at that level yet. Don't try to run before you can even crawl. Chapter 39, Tokyo Drift IX. The next day, after the former delivery guy returned to his hometown, Zhang Heng was now able to deliver all the goods before the traffic police showed up for the first time. The moment he achieved that familiar voice spoke in his ears. Acquired new skill, driving skills, level 0. Zhang Heng took in a deep breath. This period of nocturnality finally paid off, not knowing what the benchmark for skill levels was until now. About instances when his survival skills were recognized in the previous game, Zhang Heng knew that level 0 meant that he had stepped over the threshold, at the very least. When it came to time, this wasn't considered fast, but it was definitely not slow either. It had only been a week since he first touched the steering wheel. Now, even the Take-the Tetsuya, who had been waiting for Zhang Heng to screw up, could only murmur to himself, did he throw all the undelivered stuff on the side of the road? Zhang Heng simply ignored the remark, returned the keys, and silently took the bus back to school. He was starting to get used to this kind of life now. Go to class, then work, and then to deliver goods for an unkind employer. Whenever he had the time, he would reply to Amiko's strange everyday messages. The days went on like this, and in a blink of an eye, 2 months had passed. It was now drawing close to 3 months since he'd started this game. At this time, other players would have been removed from the game and had returned to reality, but for Zhang Heng, he wasn't even a fourth of the journey in. He was in no hurry to complete the primary mission, and as he was working towards achieving his goal, he unexpectedly completed 2 small achievements. One was for visiting 10 places of interest in Tokyo, and the other was for tasting 30 Japanese delicacies. Each achievement earned him 3 game points. These weren't actually tricky things to do at all. As long as you were willing, you could visit 10 of any of Tokyo's tourist attractions. The only thing to consider was the limited time given to complete the tasks. And exceptionally few people would be willing to spare a few days just to visit non-mission related places. Zhang Heng, on the other hand, had Amiko dragging him around places like Skytree, Ghibli Museum in Mitaka, Sensoji Temple, and many other sites. He never refused to go on these outings since he had plenty of time, and his daily schedule was so packed that it was nice to take a break and relax every now and then. Having a cute, snaggle-teeth tour guide bringing him around the city was a rare opportunity that somehow earned him 6 points. Other than that, having learned from his previous games, Zhang Heng kept an eye out to see if anything would be refreshed once the 60-day time limit was up. Lo and behold, he discovered a bug. Japanese universities typically had new intakes during March or April every year. Also, with the increasing number of foreign exchange students, the other peak period for club and society recruitments were in September. When Zhang Heng first arrived at the university campus, there were posters and flyers everywhere, but because he was so busy learning Japanese, he did not join any of them. So, when the 60 days reached its end, these associations began recruiting again. When Zhang Heng asked Amiko about it, she too replied that she had no idea either, and that it was probably because they did not have enough club members. But ever since that unresolved inconsistency with Bell, Zhang Heng became very sensitive about these anomalies. He was almost sure that he knew what secrets these organizations were hiding. So Zhang Heng came up with a solution: to collect every club and society's recruitment flyers. They included the typical football club, swimming club, baseball club, taekwondo club, shogi-one club, and Hanafuda club too. The Hanafuda club was hugely popular, notably when their brochures featured their president and co-president, both of whom stunningly beautiful girls. But just to be clear, Zhang Heng's attention was not on all these. His focus was on correlated clubs. So far, he had found a 4WD club, a racer's workshop, and an auto show model photography club. After he inquired about the 4WD club, though, he found out that it was not the four-wheel drive that he thought it was. This group of people were not racing 4WD cars, but instead, the mini 4WD toy cars from Dash. Yonkuro 1, developed by Tamiya Incorporated, oddly, which was also popular once upon a time, was China's knockoff version. It was, however, yesterday's news among today's generation. Zhang Heng was pleasantly surprised that a group of hardcore fans still existed in the university. At the moment, Zhang Heng did not feel like collecting dust behind some toy cars while cheering for Shooting Star, Cannonball, Burning Sun 1. That would be quite a sight to behold. On the other hand, he thought that the name Auto Show Model Photography Club sounded rather dubious. So in the end, Zhang Heng decided to join the racer's workshop. This one sounded the most legit out of the three. To his delight, he really did learn quite a lot from this group, which was founded by a senior who started as a race car fan. He and a group of like-minded friends decided to start this society, and after much self-teaching and practice, he was able to obtain specialized skills. Eventually, a team signed him when he was in his 4th year in university to become a professional race car driver, driving for the GT300 race season. 3 years ago, he put all the discoveries from his training down on paper and shared them with the members of the club. He even shot daily tutorial videos and recorded his experience and opinions in a blog, which he kept up to date. He was extremely generous when compared to Take de Tetsuya, who only gave Zhang Heng minimal pointers on their way back to the shop whenever they went to the fish market together. Still in all, both of them had very different training and driving styles. The senior was a feistier, go-all-in kind of competitor who believed in momentum, flooring the pedal all the way, whereas the owner of the seafood store was a positively technical driver. Zhang Heng had found old videos of Take-the Tetsuya's racing days, and came to learn that this guy was cunning when it came to competitions. His style was to draft, always tailing other cars closely, and then only punching it to full speed in the final 2 laps. A line he often repeated was, "Racing is a tactical game. It's not just a competition of skills, but it is also a battle of the mind. An average driver only sees the road ahead, but a great driver must never be fettered by the limitation of the eyes but look at the bigger picture." But every time after he said this, he would add insultingly, "Sigh, but a green boy like you will never understand this world. You better stick to delivering the seafood first. Thanks to you, business has been pretty good lately. The orders have increased by another 20%. The same rule applies. You will pay me back for whatever you fail to deliver." Zhang Heng had already gotten his driver's license, but eventually found out that it was pointless because he had to rush back to school for class before Tokyo was awake anyway. To add, the L300 that Take-the Tetsuya had apparently dug up from the rubbish pile was not insured and nor inspected. To top it all off, the number plate was a fake. It now made sense why Take-the Tetsuya had turned a blind eye when Zhang Heng broke traffic rules in the earlier days. The police would not be able to catch them anyway, so it did not matter how badly Zhang Heng was driving. Of course, if they were stopped by the police, they would be seriously screwed. They could be thrown into jail. Owing to that, Zhang Heng could only continue to keep a fast driving pace and lay low whenever he was on the road. Having said that, he found the notes and tutorial videos provided by the Racecar Workshop's founder to be very enlightening. His approach towards racing was the exact opposite of what Zhang Heng had been learning from the seafood store owner. Eventually, only after 3 arduous months, did Take-the Tetsuya impart his car tuning knowledge to Zhang Heng. Chapter 40, Tokyo Drift X. 4WD race cars rarely have oversteer problems, but to drift around corners with rear-wheel drive, you'll have to upgrade the suspension system of the front and rear axle. At the same time, you have to calculate the factors that help maintain trackability when turning in, informed Take-the Tetsuya as he blew a cloud of smoke from the passenger seat. This problem can be easily solved. You just need to adjust the spring and the damping coefficient. Soften the rear suspension, reduce the compression rate of the shock absorber's damping force, increase the ductility, reduce the rigidity of the rear anti-roll bar, and perhaps even increase the rear track width. Official competitions typically have rear track width restrictions, but underground tournaments are not particular about that. Also, if you notice any turbulence after the configuration, you can consider increasing the rake angle of the spoiler. Doing that will increase downforce on the rear of the vehicle. Of course, that will mean sacrificing your top speed. All things considered, there is no such thing as the perfect race car. Tuning a race car is finding the right balance between performance parameters. Zhang Heng committed everything to memory as he drove in silence, and as slowly as he could so that they would only arrive at Tsukuji Market 10 minutes later. Once the L300 pulled up in front of the seafood market, Take-the Tetsuya's mouth clamped shut instinctively. This guy was really sticking to their agreement, not saying another word as he pushed the door open and exited the van. He took 2 steps forward and then halted abruptly. He turned around and said, "Come earlier this Sunday." Zhang Heng stared after the man quizzically for a moment, and then it dawned on him. He might have triggered a new storyline as he just received a new update 4 seconds ago that his driving skills had gone from level 0 to level 1. At the same time, after a month of learning, he even attained another skill, car tuning and maintenance, level 0. So on the 3rd night, after his taking a stroll around Shinjuku with Amiko, Zhang Heng took the bus to the seafood store, 3 hours earlier than usual. When Take-the Tetsuya saw him coming, he turned around and locked the door behind him and then tossed the key to Zhang Heng. "The shop's having a day off today." "Where are we going?" "The beach. Starting from today, I will be teaching you how to drift." Zhang Heng was a little taken aback by this short announcement. Even though Take to Tetsuya had been instructing him on how to race and had taught him quite a few techniques, he had never once revealed his best secrets. Zhang Heng had asked a few times before, but he was always dismissed with, "You're not qualified yet," which was a clear and direct way of telling him that he needed to meet a certain standard. Under normal circumstances, this would have been unattainable for an inexperienced fledgling with zero foundation like Zhang Heng. He had been learning how to drive for 4 months now, which was already way past the deadline. He managed to fulfill the criteria only yesterday. It went without saying that Zhang Heng was not going to let this precious opportunity slip away. Who knew why Take to Tetsuya, the Scrooge, suddenly had a change of mind? If it were not because he had been the champion of D1 Grand Prix Tsuisu format in Tokyo, or the man who nearly bagged the Drift King title, Zhang Heng would already have looked for someone else to consult, like that Racer Workshop senior. Not only did he have the right attitude, but to benefit the next generation, and to pave the way for those who desire to become a racing driver like him. He shared his views and experience generously with the members of his group. Zhang Heng believed that if he continued to work hard, he might be able to set himself to the path of success. After all, compared to Take to Tetsuya, the seafood store owner, this senior guy was the more authentic racing driver. After much deliberation, Zhang Heng decided to give up that plan. The GT300 was a sanctioned racing competition. The racetrack and the driving skills requirements are very different from underground drift racing. As the name GT300 implies, the maximum horsepower output is capped at 300 PS. On the other end of the spectrum, the only rules in underground racing were that there were no rules. No one cared what kind of cars you drove or what type of technique you used. Whoever crossed the finishing line first was the winner. In fact, if you were ballsy enough, you could even use nitrous oxide. Zhang Heng had already read through all the workshop guy's notes and videos more than once. His vigorous and hawkish driving style was more suited to professional track racing. In a complicated environment, he would be no match for Take to Tetsuya, the former champion of D1 Grand Prix. The seafood store owner brought Zhang Heng to a private pier that was close to being abandoned and created a drift course with tires and cardboard boxes lined as the apexes. Drifting is a driving technique by deliberately oversteering the car, forcing it to slide sideways through a turn. Young people nowadays love to show off their skills by drifting, but in reality, drifting on the normal road would only slow the car down and wear out the tires. This technique was designed to cope with complex road conditions. Zhang Heng looked at the massive pile of tightly packed boxes and tires. "Isn't a little too complex?" "As long as someone can do it, it's not complex," Take to Tetsuya retorted imposingly. Zhang Heng thought after that uttering such heroic statements, the guy would at least give him some sort of live demonstration. To his disappointment, however, Tetsuya only showed him a video, and from the looks of which looked like a really old one. After that, the guy removed a folding stool and a fishing rod from the back of the van. "Don't look at me. I swore that I would never touch another steering wheel in this life. But don't you worry. The obstacles I've set up for you is not impossible to complete," said Take to Tetsuya as he baited the hook. Zhang Heng skimmed through the video and quickly realized that he had misjudged the guy. He was probably trying to make up for the fact that he could not show Zhang Heng the technique himself, but instead with a surprisingly four-tailed tutorial. Except for the demonstration at the beginning, the rest of the video contained new materials that Take to Tetsuya had recorded. Zhang Heng played the video over and over again nearly 7 times. In between, he even played the video in slow motion twice. Once he was satisfied, he tucked his phone away into his pocket and began his practice. The result, as expected, was a tragic sight. The ear-piercing screeching sounds of tires scraping the ground echoed on the pier. The cardboard boxes and tires were strewn about and had all been knocked over. Zhang Heng initially thought his driving skills had improved so much that he even thought about acquiring a car and completing the primary mission. But this new training felt like someone had just poured ice-cold water on him. Even though Take to Tetsuya had not been very reliable all this while, he would not lie to him about such a trivial matter. Since he said that completing the training was attainable, it meant that Zhang Heng was the problem. On that account, the boy wrestled with the heap of tires and boxes until the next morning, until the sun had started peering out from the horizon. The seafood store owner packed his fishing rod, stretched his body, and then looked at Zhang Heng. "You'll continue to deliver the goods after today. When you have free time, you can come here to practice drifting. So, how soon you complete your training is entirely up to you. You can start modifying the L300. I will give you suggestions, but you will have to take care of the parts yourself."